Alright, says we're live. We should be live. Guys in the chat, let me know how everything is looking and sounding. It is just me tonight. Why is it just me tonight? Because, I don't know, Brandon, I thought Brandon was going to be on, and I guess he's busy. But we can still have a good show. Not a problem, we've done it before. Usually when it's just me, I kind of brand the show as just a Q&A. So this one is still has the podcast branding, which is just a little bit off my plan, but I don't think it's really a big deal. So, you know, I think we'll be fine. DE Fox, I see you're letting me know that everything looks and sounds good. Thank you very much. Great. Hopefully it stays that way. It does not change. So, basically the plan tonight, as the title suggests, we're going to be talking about Mario, we're going to be talking about Zelda, we're going to talk about Kirby, we're going to talk about Metroid, we're going to talk about Xenoblade, and a whole bunch of theories and speculation surrounding those franchises, and probably beyond that as well, really, because the news has been a little slow lately, at least in terms of things that I like to cover. So basically we're just going to be diving a little deeper into things we already know about. So I went ahead and earlier today, this morning, I asked you guys on Twitter and here on YouTube, sort of, you know, just what would you like to be sort of discussed or sort of questions. So I'm going to be kind of going through that there. But of course, you guys in the chat, whatever you guys bring in the chat, I'll be going through that as well. So this is very much so a Q&A, but there's already topics in mind that I know I'm going to be covering based off the questions I got beforehand. And that's the basic plan. I do kind of hope Brandon's like, oh, I'm sorry, I was napping, and he jumps in. But I don't think so. I think he's just busy, and I just assumed he was gonna be available, and he's not. So yeah. But anyway, I'm gonna be checking in with the chat here, see what you guys have to say, and then I'll be kind of going question by question. I think I'll do a question on YouTube, question on Twitter, question here here in the live stream for YouTube, and we'll just kind of cycle through like that. And I'm sure we'll be here for a couple hours. Disclaimer: not trying to say anything bad, not trying to cause concern, but simply so you're aware. Yeah, I started a few minutes late. Basically, when I got out of work, one, I needed to get the live stream ready, and then I needed to take a shower because I like exercised during my lunch, so I was kind of like sweaty and stuff. So I needed a shower, I needed to get the stream ready. And the thing is, I promised to make a dinner, like a 3-course meal for a few friends tomorrow evening, but that requires prep and getting the ingredients, so I needed to get the ingredients as well after work. And by the time I came back, it was like just a couple minutes before. Hadn't eaten, so I scarfed down a taco. Have a little bit of a headache, but I'm totally fine. So just explaining why we started like 5-6 minutes late. So, you know, that's kind of just the explanation why the show may end up only being about like 90 minutes tonight, as opposed to like the usual 2 hours, because of said headache, because it's just me. But I mean, we'll see how it goes. So I mean, we'll just see. I should have gotten water, but I had a taco. I really wanted to have Coke with it, so I have Coke here. Anyway, let's see what you guys have to say in the chat, and then we'll jump into the swing of things. Guys in the chat, please leave a like, share the show to everyone, and yeah, let's get started. So I see DE Fox is already here. Hello there, friend. Thomas Owen, hello there. So Thomas Owen said, really hope Nintendo officially announces Prime 1 Remake for Switch around June this year, or we get a first look at Prime 4. Either would be amazing. And then you go on to say, I mean, Retro's banner update had to be deliberate. They're not stupid, so it's looking promising. And I'm pretty much in the same boat as you. I'm hoping for one or the other. And I do also feel it was deliberate. I do feel it is part of the marketing here. And you look at, I mean, we just got the boss rush mode for Metroid Dread, right? I have a hard time believing that there will not be a presentation this summer, presumably June. And when we get this presentation, an Nintendo Direct of some sort, right? I have a hard time believing that there won't be something Metroid there. Now, is it possible that it won't be a tease for Metroid Prime 4? Yes. Is it possible that it also won't be a Metroid Prime Remake announcement, or a Prime Trilogy, something along those lines? Also, yes. Maybe that gets held off. Maybe there's a little bit of, misinformation there with what it is. Those are possibilities. Maybe it's simply being held until next year. It's a possibility, right? But let's say all of that's the case. There's no Prime 4 to show off. There's no Prime Remake, no Prime Trilogy. I still think there's going to be something Metroid. If we don't get any of that, what I think will happen, and again, what I think is going to happen is we're going to get Prime Remake. That's what I think. And maybe a Prime 4 teaser. That's what I think is going to happen around June E3 time. Even though E3's canceled. Something, June time. If we don't get any of that, even though I think we're going to get some of that, I think instead what we'll get is a paid DLC for Metroid Dread. We just got some free DLC. So if we don't get Prime Remake, I think we're getting paid DLC for Metroid Dread for this year. That's what I think how it's going to go down. If you think about it, Fire Emblem 3 Houses, which is a game that sold over 3 million, that got paid DLC. Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which didn't even get to 3 million, so like 2.5 or something like that, it got paid DLC. So Metroid Dread, which presumably is already past 3 million at this point, even if it doesn't outpace Fire Emblem, it's already in that realm, and it is actually outpacing Fire Emblem, then it should also probably get paid DLC. Like, from that perspective, like, there's definitely reason to get DLC for that. Not to mention, the people who play Metroid Dread, I feel like they kind of stick around, in my opinion. Not saying that Fire Emblem fans or Xenoblade fans don't. I just feel like Metroid Dread's a very arcadey kind of game that you can kind of jump into, cycle through, rinse and repeat. It's a game you revisit more often than games like those, I would say. So there's almost more reason to have DLC. That's the kind of argument I'm making. Even if you don't make that argument, it's pretty much par for the course with those games. So, assuming there's no other Metroid content coming this year, I do think there'll be paid DLC. If there is other Metroid content coming this year, then I don't think there'll be Metroid DLC. It's kind of one or the other. Point is, I think come this June, there will be some Metroid content. Now, we'll talk more about that Metroid content in a bit, but I'm going to kind of continue on with everything else people want to sort of talk about here. But there was a few things that people asked beforehand that we will be getting to. But yeah, I do think we're getting something Metroid this year, no matter what. D. Fox, hearing something Metroid after 5 years of nothing would be nice. I'm hoping for more info on Scarlet and Violet. Yeah, Scarlet and Violet, they're coming out this year. When we start to get more information on that, I would have to sort of double check how Pokemon Company tends to sort of handle their lead up to every generation. I want to kind of take a look. That might be a good video idea, actually. Where's my notebook? Oh, I probably won't. I'll probably forget. But yeah, I do think. I mean, we're absolutely going to get news. It's the game's coming out this year. They're going to give us news. The question is, when will that news start to become more regular? And I feel like the answer to that is May, June. That's what I think. Because usually we get like a Pokemon Presents around then. Something like that, at least in the past we have. When there's going to be a new generation or something of the sort. So, yeah, I think May, June, I wouldn't be surprised if that's when we start to get more actual official news. And then as we get even closer, there'll be almost like weekly updates or bi-weekly updates. Bi-monthly. No, bi-weekly, yeah. Moving on here. D. Fox, Prime 4 is in development hell. I don't think it's in development hell. I think development's actually probably going well. Going back to that Retro Studios banner update, yes, they are hiring, but hiring is not a sign of bad news. It just means that they're expanding, continuing. Then hirings will continue forever, right? Like, we will hear about Monolith hiring all the time as well. That doesn't mean Monolith is not producing. They're producing a fair bit, actually. They help with multiple different Nintendo projects. They developed the Xenoblade games. They came out with multiple Xenoblade games. They help out with Zelda. So, I wouldn't take the sign of hirings as negative. I'm not saying that's what you're implying, but, some people do think that. I don't think Prime 4 is in development hell. The sad truth is that when they announced the restart, they were restarting. And yes, that initial project wasn't going to Nintendo's standard, so they did restart, but that doesn't mean that this current project is going poorly, but it's a major project. I mean, look at Breath of the Wild 2. Breath of the Wild 2 has been delayed to spring 2023. This game has been in development since 2017, at least late 2017. Now in earnest, maybe like early 2019 or late 2018, I don't know. But it's been in development for, you know, about half a decade. It's a big deal. And Metroid, I've drawn the comparison to Zelda. Like, I do think it's a similar sort of scope and ambition. Maybe not quite as much as Zelda, but it's still quite hefty. So it's going to take a lot. And Retro Studios is not the Zelda team. You know, they're not nearly as well equipped as the Zelda team. So it's going to take some time. It's going to take time. It's just that simple. They have to expand their studios. They have to get help. We kind of have to be patient, right? But I do have an optimism that Metroid Prime 4 could be ready to release as soon as sometime next year. I'm going to assume second half of 2023. That could see them waiting all another year. That's totally possible, but I don't think it's in development now. Moving on here, the chat. Yes, Megaton Menace, I am dead. I'm assuming this is because I took so long to get the stream started today. Joycey J, thank you for recommending everyone to hit the like button. Definitely do that, guys. I'd appreciate it. Even though the likes are hidden, or dislikes are, I mean, I still see those numbers. And it still does help the algorithm. Brandon White. Anyone else here disappointed with Dread's free DLC? So I did play a bit of the boss rush mode. I think it's cool. It's not anything extensive. Again, it's a free update, right? Alongside Dread mode and such. So I actually think it's pretty cool that they added that stuff. It's bringing me back to the game. I haven't gone around to playing Dread mode yet. I will get to that. But personally, I think it's a totally fine update. I think the combination of the Dread mode and the boss rush are actually pretty cool. And there's not just one boss rush. Like you can unlock like a Dread boss rush, which is also pretty exciting. So I like it. Again, it's a free update, so you know it's sort of like where should your expectations be, right? Like it's a free update. You shouldn't expect like, you know, a whole other campaign or something of that sort. Now, would it have been cool if they would have added like a surprise boss? I guess so. I'm assuming there isn't a surprise boss, by the way. I haven't gone through everything. I just kind of like dabble with it. I'm gonna assume there isn't. That would have been nice, but also not like expected. So I honestly, I think it's just par for the course. Like I think they did what you could reasonably expect for a free DLC update. It's a solid free DLC update. Again, you know, if we go throughout this whole year, we don't get paid DLC, we don't get Prime Remake, we don't get any sort of Prime 4 news, then I'm like, okay, you know, maybe you should have done something more. But as it is right now, I think it's fine. Moving on here. Brandon White, you say you can't always make the live stream, but you always watch my videos. And you watch the podcast when you can. I appreciate that. I do hope you enjoy it. I'm assuming you enjoy them since you watch them, so thank you. Moving on here. Cool. Looks like more people are saying that everything is loud and clear. So D Fox asked me. I know you asked this earlier. I think. What are my thoughts on the Sonic 2 movie? So the truth is, I haven't seen the Sonic 2 movie, and the even more of the truth, I haven't seen even the first one yet. I know I should have. I just haven't gone around to it. I actually did go to the movies this weekend, and yeah, the poster caught my eye. But like, I went to go watch the Batman, which, by the way, I think is really good. I think the Batman's a pretty good movie. I'll say that in general, I find that the DC films are lower quality than the Marvel films. But I have noticed that over the last couple years, DC has picked it up. And the Batman, they did a spectacular job. It's really good. Very, very, very strong film. Yeah, I highly recommend watching it. It is a long one, but it is a pretty good one too. Let's see here. All right. Yeah, so, you know, I would love to talk about the Sonic stuff, but I haven't seen the movie, so I just feel like I can't. Yeah, I see Megaton Mass, you're also asking me about it as well. I'll see if I can... I need to watch the first one first, so, you know, I just can't speak on it. If I haven't seen the movies, I can't speak on it. B. James, I wonder if Switch Sports will sell or be a dud. It's almost time for release, and there has been zero marketing. I wouldn't say zero. Previews are starting to come out. They put out an overview trailer like about a week or so ago. We're just in the early parts of April. The game comes out at the end of April, so we're not even 2 weeks away. They're gonna pick up that marketing. They already are starting to pick it up, but right now, you know, like, we're gonna go full force in about a week or so, I think. Yeah, maybe a week to 2 weeks. I'm not really doing too much math right now. So, yeah, they're gonna go hard with it. I wouldn't be concerned about that. Now, going specifically to the question though, will Switch Sports sell well? I think it's gonna absolutely sell well. I think Switch Sports is going to be the best-selling sort of casual effort by Nintendo. I think that is saying something, because Ring Fit Adventure has shown to have some strong selling legs. Like, it's an evergreen title, not to the same level as Animal Crossing or Mario Kart or anything like that, but it does continue to sell year by year. I think Switch Sports has huge potential to go way beyond that. I think it's gonna do really well. One, because it is a sequel to Wii Sports. Now, I wonder how well that translates, because Wii Sports, Nintendo Switch Sports, I feel like you should be able to figure that out, but not everyone is as in tune with that sort of thing, and perhaps the messaging won't be super clear that it's a direct sequel. But I think for the most part, people are gonna get it. And I think that's going to definitely help that naming, that branding. I think it's going to go over a long ways towards it selling well. Not to mention, I think the game is just going to be high quality. Everything I've seen of the game is high quality. Like, it looks very polished. Like, visually, it stands out. I think there's a pretty good amount of content so far, and they have these planned free updates as well. So I personally think, you know, that they have a plan for this. I do think that they're hoping this is going to become sort of an evergreen title as well. And I think, you know, after these free updates, perhaps, let's say early next year, they announce paid DLC, and this paid DLC may be free on Nintendo Online. Like, I do think that's the expansion pack, right? I do think that's kind of the plan in store for Switch Sports. I think they plan on supporting this for a while. I do think it's a big deal, and I do not think it's going to be a dud. Can it be a dud? I mean, yeah, I guess, but do you really want to bet against a core sort of Nintendo franchise on the Switch? Like, let's think about that for a second. How many of Nintendo's franchises have failed on Switch? Most of them have seen their best-selling entry on Switch. Now, most of these are core, like, hardcore-centric Nintendo games, right? If we're talking about the casual entries, those are the titles that tend to pale by comparison on Switch, because Switch is more of a core gamer-centric kind of system. It's like an actual gamer system, right? It's not like for casuals necessarily, but those games still sell. And I do think Switch Sports appeals to even still the core gamer. Not everyone, obviously, but I think a large enough market there. I just have a hard time seeing this being a dud. I don't think it's going to outsell Wii Sports. That's not going to happen. But I do think it's going to be successful, and I will stand by my statement. It will be the best-selling sort of casual style kind of Nintendo Switch game. Now, when I say casual style, because I guess that's sort of a blurry definition, right? It's not very clear cut. I wouldn't put Animal Crossing or Mario Kart there, right? But I mean more along the lines of Ring Fit Adventure, Nintendo Labo, Game Builder Garage. There's like the fitness boxing, things like that. Nintendo Switch Sports will outperform. That I feel pretty good about that. All right, so I definitely done a fair bit of in the actual live chat. I want to get to some things that people asked me beforehand. I'll come back to the chat in a little bit, but I do think it would be fair to actually address the questions that I asked people to ask beforehand, right? The kind of the main point of the show here. So first, let me go to. I don't want that to play out loud. Fun fact: I listen to different types of metal, but let's see here. Okay. And I kind of hearted the ones that I knew that I would kind of get to. Yeah, and again, I know multiple people have asked me about the Sonic 2 movie. I have not seen it. I haven't seen the first one yet. I know I should. Forgive me. I will get to it. It's not that I don't like Sonic. I actually do. It's just, I don't know. I just haven't had time. Also, like, there's just different circumstances. I wasn't going to the movies that much when the first one came out. Now I'm kind of going to the movies more often. So things are changing. All right. First question here. Man, you know, I intended on doing some research for this. I didn't get around to doing it. Zoe Lindwall had asked me, and I don't really know the answer to this, so I feel bad, but I will, you know, at least give you my 2 cents. One is Teenage Mutant Shredder's Revenge and SpongeBob the Cosmic Shake and Cuphead Delicious Last Course coming out on Switch. You know, I don't know. I do not know when those are coming out. I am anticipating Teenage Mutant Shredder's Revenge though. I'm excited for a new TMNT game. This one looks really good. I guess we didn't get any information on it during the February Direct, did we? Not that I can think of. I could have slipped my mind. June, you know, I think June is a good opportunity where we can get an update on that. I can't speak for the other two. I can't. I am playing through Cuphead though, and I am enjoying it. So we'll see. Maybe that we get an update on in September. I'm just guessing though. Okay, so I was hoping Brandon was gonna be on because I'm not like a huge Kingdom Hearts fan, but I did see the trailer. So Chad Pape had asked, talk about Kingdom Hearts. Oh yeah, hype train, let's go. So I'll tell you, I have been thinking about jumping into the Kingdom Hearts series, but that is like I would say like a tall order because they're fairly long RPGs. But I have been thinking about it, and I did see the Kingdom Hearts 4 trailer. I have seen a fair bit of Kingdom Hearts 3 and such, and you know, I know of the series. It's not like I'd be completely alien to it. I know who Sora is and things of that nature. And man, it was cool. It was cool seeing Sora in like a pseudo-realistic world. Obviously going for a far more realistic art style, at least at first. We'll see how things change as that progresses. Visually, the game does look awesome. It does kind of remind me of Kingdom Hearts 3 pretty much, just more realistic looking as opposed to like kind of colorful but still flashy. So I mean, it was epic, and you're seeing like him fight like the giant boss. It felt like a dynamic sort of thing, but also at the same time it all looked very scripted, and I don't like games to be super scripted. I mean, I'm okay with particular moments. I just don't want entire boss fights to be scripted like that. So I understand, it's just an initial trailer. We'll see how things sort of pan out when we get more on the game. But yeah, I mean, it looks sick. I'll tell you that. It's cool looking. It is absolutely cool looking. And I bet you they want to go hard with it. I bet you with Sora being in Smash Brothers and the Kingdom Hearts games being on Switch, there's definitely some momentum there that can trickle over. And obviously Kingdom Hearts 3 didn't come out it wasn't that long ago, right? So just a few years. I can see, them really wanting to follow it up well. And, I actually do think that there will be Kingdom Hearts 4 on if not Switch 2. I do think it will be on a Nintendo system. So, I do think that will happen. It's just timing is really what is kind of the distinguishing factor here. Because if it's on Switch, that'll take time. That'll take time for them to sort of like scale it down, or just give us a cloud version. Big third-party games like this tend to take longer to come out on the Switch, but they oftentimes still do. So I could see that happening. But again, we are getting even later and later into the Switch's life cycle. So how long does that really last, right? So I feel like we're getting close to where, okay, maybe it should just come out on the next Nintendo system, Switch 2, which will be far more powerful and could run the game a lot better, and there will be a lot less scaling down to make it work. And it can work. Switch is Unreal Engine 5 compatible, so it can work. So let's see here. I'll do one more here, and then I'll go to Twitter, and then I'll go back to the live stream chat. Ahmed Musa. Not convinced with new Switch in Sprint 2023, knowing that Mario Kart DLC is up to the end of 2023. I thought new Mario Kart will be launch title of Switch. So, yeah, I can pick up what you're putting down here. So basically, I'm not convinced that a new Nintendo Switch is coming out next year either. But I also am not convinced it's not. I don't know. Most of us don't know. But it's peculiar because on one hand, we do have the Mario Kart DLC coming out throughout the end, all the way leading up until the end of 2023. Now, I would assume they'll be done a few months beforehand. But with there being DLC coming out for Mario Kart, the strong implication there is that a brand new Mario Kart is a ways off. And I don't mean like 6 months after the DLC comes out. Like, I feel like even a year would probably be too soon. We're probably talking more about, I would feel like the earliest would be 2 years after that. The earliest. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. I mean, how often do we see a sequel come out shortly after the DLC? I don't think it's something that happens too often. I think there's a bit of a window, you know? So, and especially with Nintendo, right? I mean, let's think about this. So, let's just think about some Nintendo games, major ones, like ones made by Nintendo EPD, where there was DLC, paid DLC even. How much longer did it take for the follow-up to come after that, okay? So, Breath of the Wild 2. Breath of the Wild came out March 2017, and then there was 2 waves of DLC that came out throughout the year. The final wave came out in December 2017, which is around when we heard they were working on the next Zelda. They announced the next Breath of the Wild in 2019. So a year and a half later, a year and a half after the final DLC of Breath of the Wild happened, they announced that it was a sequel. They showed it off a little bit with that first trailer. So, but obviously the game's not even out now, and we're in 2022, right? So, but obviously Zelda's a bit of a different beast compared to other Nintendo games. But still, I feel like we had to wait a year and a half before they announced something new to follow that up, right? Now let's take a look at Splatoon 3. I mean, Splatoon 2 to 3, right? So Splatoon 2, also a 2017 game. And I believe the Octo expansion came out 2018, like mid-2018, right? So about a year later, that DLC came out. We didn't hear about Splatoon 3 until the beginning of last year, right? February 2021. So, yeah, that's not wrong. Yeah, February 2021. So that's, you know, that's almost 3 years, 2.5 years. That's a bit of a window. You see what I mean, right? Like, so, and the game's not coming out till later this year. So, you know, you have to wait at least 3 years right there. Trying to think of another example where we have like a sequel of a game that there was DLC. But those are kind of the 2 big examples, both made by internal Nintendo. I feel like those are probably the best comparisons to the Mario Kart situation. So, with that in mind, I think waiting at least 2 years is probably a reasonable expectation, perhaps more. So, you know, with that in mind, right, I don't think we're going to be getting a new Mario Kart too soon. So the reason that's even relevant is because we're talking about the next Nintendo system, right? And typically we see a new Mario Kart every main system. So if we have to wait at least 2 years after, so let's say 2025, could we see like a new Mario Kart 2025 at the earliest, maybe more likely like 2026 or something like that? Yeah, and I think by 2026 there could be a new system. But I guess the point is, because we have to kind of wait, you know, we don't have to get a system next year is the main point. That doesn't seem super likely based off the Mario Kart situation, right? But just because a system can come out next year and the Mario Kart game could still come out 2025 or 2026. I mean, for example, Wii U came out 2012, Mario Kart 8 didn't come out till 2014. So it took a little bit. You know, so you don't have to come out with the next Mario Kart immediately. But typically, Nintendo tries to get out like that Zelda, that Mario, that Smash, that Mario Kart fairly early on to the system's life cycle. But if you get it out within 2.5 years, not too crazy. But this is all assuming it's like a next generation system. It's like a typical sort of like jump, you know, moving on to the next hardware, right? This might be a different thing because we're already looking at a situation where the Switch is a hybrid console, right? So it's sort of carrying on the lifespan or the series of systems of the handheld department and the home console department. It's both. And this system's life cycle is already longer than what we see for Nintendo's home consoles, pretty much. And the sales aren't really slowing down. Like, maybe they've dipped slightly, but like, I mean, it could also go up again for this year, right? So it's hard to say if we're even seeing a true sales decline for Switch right now. Like, it hasn't become a pattern is my point. Like, if next year the numbers are also slightly lower or significantly lower, then we're seeing that downward trend. We're seeing that it's now Switch is pretty much done and Nintendo needs to move on to the next system. We're not really seeing a strong downward trend yet. So Nintendo doesn't have a strong need to replace the system yet. So we're not really in a rush is the main point here. Now, at the same time, historically, especially with Nintendo's home consoles, they kind of wait till sales die down entirely, and that last year, there's like no games. I don't think Nintendo wants to do that this time around. I think they're looking to do more of a seamless transition. How do they handle that? Do they do more of like a mid-gen refresh where it's like next generation, but not next generation, where it can play newer games, better running games, but also still run the same stuff, and most of your things like the eShop and all of that will still transfer over? Will they have more of a seamless transition in that way? Maybe. And if it is something like that, where it's not like a full-on generational leap, or it is, but it also simultaneously isn't, then maybe it does happen next year, right? Maybe any game that comes out on base Switch, if it's on that newer Switch, it just looks and runs better. So if that happens, then there could potentially still be new hardware next year. Now, I do feel like it is a little early because Switch OLED just came out, what, like 15 months ago? Maybe 16 months ago or something like that. 16, 17 months ago. Not even a year and a half yet. Wait, I'm bonkers. It's been like 6 months. It came out last October. This is March, right? Like, I'm going nuts. It's been half a year, basically. About half a year. Yeah. I added a whole year, which is kind of nuts. But by next year, that's where I got confused. By next year, 2023, around this time, could there be a new system? That would be a shorter gap than what we've seen on Switch, right? Because Switch came out March 2017, Switch Lite came out September 2019, so that's about 2.5 years, and then Switch OLED came out October 2021, which is 2 years and a month, right? So 25 months. So we're looking at about 2 to 2.5 year gaps is the basic point here. If Switch 2 or Switch Pro, whatever you want to call it, comes out spring 2023, we're only looking at a 1.5 year gap, which is shorter than the other gaps there. So that would be kind of going against the Switch pattern. But if we look at 3DS, that's kind of par for the course. Most of the systems came out like every year plus a couple months. So it's conceivable that we could see maybe like a mid-gen refresh, like a Switch Plus or something. And maybe it does come out alongside Breath of the Wild 2, which is now slated for spring 2023. And I put out a video recently kind of talking about what might have been the real reason for the delay. And ultimately, I concluded that there could be a combination of reasons, but one possibility might be because they wanted to come out with a new piece of hardware. So maybe something's going on there, but on the flip side, because it would be shorter, because there's not really a need, it's hard to say for sure that a new system's coming out next year. Hard to say. And again, it being Switch 2 seems unlikely. Maybe a mid-gen refresh, and then 2 to 3 years later we see another thing. Hard to say. I'm not really convinced either way. There's evidence on both sides. We'll see, obviously. But I don't expect that to be announced till like January. If there is a new system coming out, I don't think it's gonna be announced this year, because why would they ruin their sales for this year, right? So that just something to kind of keep in mind there. And now I'm going to transition to the Twitter chat. And like I said, I'm going to be jumping between the 3 different chat options here of like questions and such. So I will come back to live chat, don't worry. But let's check here. Let's see. There we go. Okay. All right, so now I'm on Twitter. All right, so Model 64, my boy Sean, how you doing, buddy? I don't know if you're watching now, but whenever you do see this, what is up? What dead franchise series should Nintendo bring back? No obvious answers like Star Fox or F-Zero. Well, my answers were going to be Star Fox and F-Zero. But going beyond those, right? Even though I think both can happen and should happen. Donkey Kong. I think Donkey Kong is one that is coming back, right? I don't know if it'll be announced this year, and I've been talking about how I'm not sure it'll be announced this year for a while, but I do feel like by the end of next year, we will know about a new Donkey Kong game. Now you could argue, oh, Donkey Kong's not really dead. Well, we haven't seen a mainline new Donkey Kong come out that's entirely brand new since 2014. It's 2022. It's been 8 years. That's a fair bit. Now you could say in 2018 they came out with Tropical Freeze on Switch, sure, but it's a port of the game that came out in 2014, and it had no real additional content but Funky Kong. So you know the series hasn't been very active. That's definitely a series that I think Nintendo could be going back. No, not think. I believe wholeheartedly they're going back to. I mean, we know for a fact that they are expanding the Nintendo Universal Park with a Donkey Kong region, of all the regions, right? And then we know that they hired Seth Rogen to play Donkey Kong in the new Mario movie that is coming out at the end of this year, and they even hired someone for Crank. Like there's other Kongs in the movie, not just Donkey Kong. So there is like Donkey Kong, relatively major Donkey Kong representation in the Mario movie that's coming out later this year. So if you have a plan for a Donkey Kong expansion to the Nintendo Universal Park, you have some high-paid actors for the Mario movie for Donkey Kong coming out this year, and there's this crazy rumor that's been reported by so many different spaces of the Donkey Kong game that's been in the works. I think, there's quite a bit of smoke there. I think Donkey Kong is coming back, and I also want it to come back. Like, it should come back. Donkey Kong is sick. Donkey Kong is amazing. And you see like certain franchises that we see that have sort of been revived or sort of reimagined on Switch. They've been incredible. Look at Breath of the Wild, obviously. Super Mario Odyssey, pretty incredible, right? More recently, Metroid Dread, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Like, these entries are some of my favorite entries in their respective franchises. And I think Nintendo wants to do the same for Donkey Kong. And I think it's going to be a sick thing. Now, is it going to be 3D? Is it going to be 2D? At this point, I'm more siding with it going to be more of a 2D game. But I do think it's going to be like a 2.5D thing where there will be camera perspective changes. Maybe some of it will be 3D gameplay. Maybe it'll be more isometric, similar to 3D World or Kirby and the Forgotten Land, actually. Which I think would be awesome. Like, I don't need every Nintendo game to be fully open world. but something like Kirby in the Forgotten Land or 3D World would be pretty darn cool. And I think that could be a great space for Donkey Kong. Now, going beyond Donkey Kong, another franchise that I would love for Nintendo to bring back, there's a couple, really, there's a lot. Another one is Wave Race. I think that's pretty basic. It's a jet ski racer. Bring it back. They would just be cool. Like jets, like the actual like water physics and Wave Racer is just awesome. So let's see, another one would be great. And I don't just mean like a Wii Sports Resort minigame, although I could see a situation where they bring in jet ski racing in Nintendo Switch Sports as DLC. Maybe that's just a sort of, you know, check out the waters. There's some sort of pun in there for Wave Race, but you know, check the tide or what have you. Yeah, I think that's another franchise Nintendo should definitely bring back. You know, we should have more than just Mario Kart for their racing genre, like absolutely. But going beyond that, another one that would really love to see, that is hard to say if it's likely, probably unlikely. I think most people would say unlikely, is the Earthbound series. And the main reason why is because the series creator and writer doesn't want to continue the story. He feels like the story is complete. So, you know, with that in mind, it's unlikely that they will continue it. But, man, they could, though. Like, they could. Like, what if they were just to reimagine the trilogy? You know, just rebuild the games and have sort of a reimagining of each game. You know, and have it be something completely new. I wouldn't even necessarily mind it if it was like the 2D sprite style, but man, what if it was like a 3D thing? What if it were like an HD 2D thing? Like, there's so many different art styles that it could go with, so many different like visual things. And if they were to go for something more 3D, like they could do some pretty cool gameplay stuff, you know? One of the fascinating things about Earthbound is that the environments, the characters, the people, there's some very quirky, weird characters with some very strange things going on. Just imagine that realized in a more 3D sort of adventure style RPG kind of game. That could be cool. Like, maybe even envision it somewhat like, this might sound crazy, but just hear me out. Envision it something like Grand Theft Auto. Now, I'm not saying Ness should go around beating up people and doing all sorts of illegal things, but like that sort of like sandbox style of exploring a town or city and just interacting with different people, and that kind of causes different changes to the environment, that could be pretty cool. And it doesn't even have to be like open world necessarily, but have like these open sandboxes that lead to different areas. And these communities have different things that go on. Like, that's just kind of how Earthbound works. But maybe expand upon that more so, right? Have it even be more in depth, more characters, more side quests, more weird events in between, but still sort of follow the main story, but, you know, remix a little bit, reimagine that story, and do that for each Earthbound game. I think there's actually like a lot of potential there, and that wouldn't be going against necessarily the creator's vision, because they would just be retelling the stories as opposed to continuing it, right? So that's just kind of something I would love to see, and I think it could be very successful if done correctly. Will it happen? I think most of you will probably say not likely, but it would be really cool if they did. Although, you know, I'm sure most people are just kind of hoping that they localize Mother 3, which is like, seems like a low effort thing in comparison to a whole trilogy of like reimagined 3D RPG games, you know, with tons of side quests and weird characters and in-depth things going on. Like, obviously there's a big difference in scope there, but those are just kind of some cool like franchises I think Nintendo could bring back that would be pretty awesome. Oh, Kid Icarus, that's another one, but just give me Kid Icarus Uprising, but on a better system. That would be great. And then continue that series. That would be great. You don't need to do anything else. Another one, I was gonna be done with this topic, but another one that comes to mind actually is Ice Climbers. Imagine a game that was purely, it's a platforming game, but the entire premise of this game is co-op platforming up crazy mountains. That's the game. You just dial in on that style of gameplay. What could that be? It would be a unique experience that we haven't really seen before. And before someone says, well, that's what Ice Climbers was. Yes, it was, but back on an 8-bit system. Imagine it on an HD system that has teraflops to do stuff, you know? The gameplay would be so different. There would be a fresh, new experience, and it would be something fun to see. So I would love to see that. I think there's a lot of potential with that gameplay concept as well. Will that ever happen? I mean, I think it could happen. I don't know when it'll happen. It might happen this year. It might happen 5 years from now, 20 years from now. Eventually, I would not be shocked if Nintendo revisits Ice Climbers. Like, there's just a cool gameplay concept there. Will they do it? I don't know. Maybe someone will have to hear this conversation and think, he might be onto something. You know, I don't know. Spread the idea. Let's get Ice Climbers to happen. That would just be awesome to see. So, yeah, again, I know you guys want me to talk about the Sonic 2 movie, but I haven't seen it, so I can't really speak on it. I'll do this other one on Twitter, and then I'll cycle back to the live chat. So, Tom Owen, if Nintendo will do a direct around E3, and what Metroid games could show up there? Prime 4, Prime Trilogy, HD, Prime 1 Remake. So, kind of touched on this earlier already. I don't think Prime Trilogy is a thing. I do think it's just Prime Remake, but I think it's Prime Remake, not Remaster. Now they may still call it a remaster, but it's not going to be like Skyward Sword HD. It's going to be more like Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, where you're going to see a lot of new assets, a lot of new textures, new thing. I don't know if there'll be new things to explore, but the gameplay will be greatly worked on. There's gonna be a night and day difference in terms of visual style. It's not gonna basically just be the game in HD cleaned up a little bit. It's gonna be a lot more than that. It's gonna be kind of almost rebuilt with a lot of new assets. So I think Prime 1 Remake is the thing to sort of look forward to for Metroid in the near future. I hope I'm not wrong, right? I could be wrong on that. Because you know, you never really know what Nintendo wants to do with Metroid or any other of their franchises, but I think that's the next big Metroid thing. Is there a possibility that maybe that was just like a proof of concept and people saw or heard about that? Maybe they even thought about making it into a full game, but ultimately they decided to just focus on Prime 4. That's a possibility, actually. You know, like I think oftentimes that happens with these rumors that we get from credible sources. I think they're coming from a point of truth, but plans can change. Maybe they saw something they got info from something early on, and they just went in a slightly different direction. Maybe they saw information and they interpreted what that information may mean. And you know how if you think about the term rumor, right? They would go back to when we were kids and they sort of told us about this idea of rumor in elementary school. They would even sometimes, I don't know if you guys ever did that in school, but like we would play this exercise when I was in elementary school where you would get like 10 people and the teacher would tell one thing to that one kid and that kid was supposed to say the same thing to the other. By the time you get to the end of the line, it would be very, very different. Now, truth be told, I'm sure some of the kids would sort of mess around intentionally, but I mean, that's the thing. When information is going down the pipeline, if different people are saying different things, everyone has different intentions or perceptions or interpretations. So information can be bastardized. Not saying that's what is happening with Prime Remake, but I'm simply putting it out there that we don't know for certain if it's actually going to happen. But Emily Rogers has talked about it. Nate the Hate has talked about it. Jeff Grubb has talked about it. A number of industry insiders have talked about it. So I do believe it is happening. And I do think it makes sense, especially based off the things Imran Khan has said about Metroid Prime 4 restarting and Retro Studios having worked on a Prime remake. Nintendo saw that as a proof of concept, and they're like, hey, make this into a whole on remake, and then also, you know what, we've seen what you can do with Prime and this engine, build that into Prime 4 as well. Like, I kind of buy that. Like, that kind of makes a lot of sense. if Prime Remake is happening, I think it's happening this year. So we'll find out at E3. I'm kind of expecting that. Prime 4 maybe a tease there. And again, I talked about earlier, if we don't get those, I expect paid DLC for Metroid Dread. One or the other. But let's get back to live chat here. Let's see how you guys are doing. All right. I expect the chat to just kind of move all around and confuse me, because that's what YouTube does. But looking here, it hasn't freaked me out yet, so that's good news. Jean-Carl Adamy, developers of HAL Laboratory stated more 3D mainline Kirby could come in the future. You bet it will. You bet it will. Yeah, totally. This is not the end of 3D Kirby. This is the beginning. So, I kind of want to do a bit of a review. I have a few different ideas for videos for Kirby and the Forgotten Land. I've recently gone through the main campaign and I'm now exploring the post game for Kirby and the Forgotten Land, so I'm progressing. I'm like 75% done with the game. I do plan on 100%ing it. So I'm progressing pretty well. I haven't been able to convince my brother, who I've been staying with recently, to play the co-op with me, because I want to see how Bandana D plays. I will get around to that before I do a proper review, I guess. Even though I'm not gonna do a proper review, it's just gonna be me sort of going into detail about the game. But man, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, super good. I think it's gonna go down as my favorite Kirby game ever, and I don't think I'm alone in that feeling. I think this is Kirby really stepping out of his comfort zone, going the extra mile, and I think that is going to lead to strong sales. And if there's going to be strong sales, they're going to do something, they're going to follow that up. If this is the best-selling Kirby, if it doesn't even have to be the best-selling Kirby game, but if this outperforms Kirby Star Allies by a couple million, which would basically mean it's the best-selling Kirby, then they will continue this 100%. And let me tell you, the way they did it, it didn't feel like this is their first time doing a 3D game. And I know HAL Labs has worked on different things. I'm sure they can get advice and suggestions and overseeing from others places, but it felt like they've been doing this for a while. The game's super polished. There's an attention to detail there. There's some pretty cool mechanics with the different copy abilities. You'd actually be surprised. So what's really cool about the copy abilities is that yes, they sort of you can upgrade them throughout the game, but there are these alternate dimension challenges that you do, and oftentimes as you do different ones, they sort of force you to learn a different angle to that copy ability. There are certain things to these copy abilities that you may not have realized. Sure, there's only 2 or 3 attacks or moves you can do with each copy ability, but the application of them sometimes can be unexpected, and they can lead to some very crazy cool new ways of exploring the world, or just progressing, or just neat ways to do certain challenges. So the point I'm getting here is actually a lot of depth there, and when you factor that in on top of the other abilities, the mouthful abilities, which also do some crazy stuff, same idea really in terms of the depth there. That leads to a lot of variety with the gameplay, the different enemy types, the different things that happen in the environment, which are fairly interactive and very visually impressive. There's a lot there, and there's tons of charm with the characters and the story, and then the actual Waddle Dee town, there's a lot to do there as well with the different mini games and such, and it's a very nice, complete, well-crafted gameplay loop. Yeah, Kirby and the Forgotten Land has got it going on. It's got it going on. When I was doing the final boss, because like I said, there is a post game, but when I was doing the final boss, I gotta tell you, I was screaming, and I was screaming delightfully. I was happy, man. It was a nice, cool, satisfying, climactic end there with a bit of emotion too. It was good. This game is very well balanced. It's very well done. I don't really have any legitimate criticisms about the game. It's just a very well polished game. I don't really think there's anything wrong with it. I actually feel like you look at reviews, and it has reviewed quite favorably. I actually think it's underrated. Like, that's how good I think it is. Like, I think it's almost been not rated as high just because it's Kirby. But this Kirby, to me, feels reminiscent of 3D Mario levels of quality. Like, legit, for those who wanted like another 3D Mario, you want another 3D Mario game, play Kirby in the Forgotten Land. Is it different? Yes, it's different. But it's also very similar in a lot of ways. It feels somewhat like 3D World, not quite the same. It is a different style of gameplay, but it's still a platformer ultimately. And there's similar style of challenges. And the end, honestly, kind of reminds me of Mario Odyssey and how that ended as well. It's actually got it has a lot of Mario, it has a lot of Zelda, and even has a little bit of Metroid in it, which is neat. Obviously Kirby is Kirby. Kirby has sort of share a lot of those elements, but yeah, Kirby in the Forgotten Land has got it going on. There will be more Kirbys like this. They would be fools to not continue this, and this game is going to be successful. It just is. And if it's not, then what's wrong with you people? Buy Kirby in the Forgotten Land. It is an incredibly good game. One of the best games I've played in a while. It's gonna, is it a top 10 Switch game? It might be, and that's saying a lot. There's a lot of really good games on Switch. To me, at least, it's like, I think I gotta think about it, but it might be. It might be. Yeah, it's really good. Moving on here with the chat, though. Let's see here. Charles Shadell. Enemy. Let's start with what's next, the kind of Kirby we will have. The producers did say the Forgotten Land is his first of new era, meaning what exactly? I think, yeah, it's the beginning of 3D Kirby. They're just getting started. This is a new genre of Kirby. This feels fresh. This doesn't feel stale. This is the direction they should go in. Now, hopefully, this style doesn't start to feel stale as well. But they should continue this. By the way, I will say, because one issue with the Kirby games, you could argue, is that they're easy. I don't even feel like the game is that easy. Like, I actually did die a few different times. Now, I did pick the harder difficulty wild mode, which is not that hard, by the way. But I also always try to 100% things, and there are certain challenges. Like, if you want to get the target times, if you want to get every Waddle Dee, it can be hard. Like, with all the bosses, they have different tasks you need to do to get every Waddle Dee. Like, you have to beat bosses without taking damage. That's not easy. It's actually pretty challenging. So, I actually have died quite a bit playing Kirby in the Forgotten Land. Now, has it been frustratingly hard? There was just like one that I would say was like frustratingly hard, and that's because I wanted to do it with a particular sort of copy ability. Yeah, the game has some challenge. Like, I wouldn't qualify it as a difficult game, but it's not like a cakewalk entirely. Now, you could choose to play it in a way where it is basically a cakewalk, but you know, if you play it to 100% it, it's not easy. Not at all. I mean that in a good way. It's challenging. It's satisfying when you succeed. Let's see here. The Sword Flight YT. I hope there will be new Legend of Zelda remake. So, will there be another remake for the Legend of Zelda series? Eventually, yeah, there will be. I have a hard time believing they won't. There's quite a history of them doing that. They're more like remasters usually, but yeah. Will they eventually... Which one will they do next, though, right? I mean, they've remade Link's Awakening. They've remastered Skyward Sword, Twilight Princess, The Wind Waker. They remade Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. What will they do next? Maybe the Oracle games. If not the Oracle games, I would love to see maybe Minish Cap. I think the Oracle games are... Those are the Capcom developed ones, though. So we'll see how that's handled. but maybe that, or that perhaps they remake Ocarina of Time Majora's Mask again in the future. I could see that. Or maybe they go back to some of the other older 2D Zeldas and they reimagine them. That would be cool. That's another possibility. Like, I mean, A Link Between Worlds is kind of already a reimagining of Link to the Past, but at the same time, like a sequel. So there's that. But maybe, like, for example, Zelda 2. That would be cool. You could also argue that Breath of the Wild, in a way, is like a spiritual reimagining of the original Legend of Zelda. There are at least some comparisons there. But if you're sort of asking, like, when are we getting, like, Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD? Well, since Breath of the Wild 2 has moved to next year, maybe it comes out this year. Just my only sort of, like, hesitance is that because Breath of the Wild 2 is slated for spring, if it holds to that timing, that's early 2023. When do we see Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD? Do they come out at the same time, and do they come out at the end of the year? I don't think so. I think they're gonna want at least a half-year gap between those projects. So I would say that if we're getting them, it's gonna come out like late summer. So I would expect late summer, early fall. Like early, it has to be early fall, not late fall. Early fall, like September. Is that even considered? Yeah, like September at the latest. So we'll see on that. B. James, I still feel Super Mario Odyssey 2 is in development, and it has to be. So, something that happened a little while ago that I think, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, I could be, right? But in my opinion, something happened a little while ago that steered people in the wrong direction. And that was the leak related to the latest Sonic game. Because there was a leak, I guess you could call it, where there was a sort of, whatchamacallit, like, my brain's like dying on me right now. Been up since 7, which is not, I've been up for like a reasonable, I mean, like more, it's what, 14 hours, whatever. Basically, there was a survey. That's the word I was looking for. There was a survey. And in this survey, and obviously the people part of the survey were part of some sort of non-disclosure agreement, right? This information should not have come out. But in this survey, there was a few different games, and there was different gameplay concepts and asked if you'd be interested in this or that. One of them was the Sonic game that's supposedly coming out this year, right? The open world Sonic game. And then also, there was a Mario Odyssey 2 discussed in there as well. And a lot of the elements described about the Sonic game have come to fruition. So basically, yeah, this Sonic game was actually, the information on it was out for a while. People didn't really know what to believe or not until we got more details about the Sonic game and saw this survey had some truth to it. And because of that, because the Mario Odyssey thing is also there, people think that Mario Odyssey 2 is in development based off this survey. But let's consider some things here. Why would this survey have even happened? Why would a big Sega project and a Nintendo project be a part of the same thing? Maybe they both use the same company? Maybe. But it's also possible that not every single concept in that survey is true. Some of them were, some of them were not. It was meant, you put in different things to throw people off. You don't want this information to be leaked, but you still want to get that survey so you can get an understanding of what may or may not work. So my belief is that this survey happened and there were some real things in it, like the Sonic stuff, but there were also some fake things in it, like the Mario Odyssey 2 stuff. That survey was from a few years ago. We've heard nothing about Mario Odyssey 2. And while it could happen, there could be a Mario Odyssey 2. I don't think there's going to be a Mario Odyssey 2. And the reason I think that, beyond me just thinking that that leak is fake or rumor is fake, specifically for the Mario part at least, it's just not real information is the main point. But the reason why beyond that is because Mario Odyssey came out 2017. They didn't do any paid DLC on the game, which I thought was weird. Which would have led one to believe, okay, they're working on a sequel, right? Like, I was a part of the Mario Odyssey 2 sort of campaign. But now it's 2022. No signs of Mario Odyssey 2. I think the boat has sailed on that, especially when you consider that we just had the Mario 35th anniversary not that long ago. And in that Mario 35th anniversary direct, they announced and discussed so many Mario related things, but nothing related to Mario Odyssey 2. What they did give us, though, was Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, which literally has new 3D Mario content in there. It's basically a mini new 3D Mario game, a campaign. It takes like what, at least 8 to 15 hours or something like that. It's a little campaign. That's kind of a lot. Like, we got Mario Odyssey, and now we have 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. That 3D World is a pretty, like, of all the Wii remasters, that one actually had a decent amount of work done. They sped up the gameplay. It's at a higher resolution. Obviously it has Bowser's Fury. Like, there's some good work done to that. So that's another 3D Mario there already. Not to mention there's Mario Maker, and then there's NSMB Wii U, and then there's a lot of Mario stuff. I don't know if Nintendo feels like they need to come out with a Mario Odyssey 2 as well. We're getting closer to the next generation, and especially now with the Booster Course Pass and that Mario Kart DLC, Mario Kart ain't the launch title. Okay? Mario Kart's not launched on next generation hardware for Nintendo. And it's not going to be Smash Brothers either. If it is, it's going to be like a remaster. It's going to be like a Smash Ultimate Deluxe. And it's not going to be the main thing. It'll be a complementary piece at best. Like that more likely we're going to wait even longer for the next sort of like Smash update. But, it's not those. They're going to need something brand new. So it's not going to be Mario Kart. It's not going to be Smash Brothers. What would Nintendo use to launch new hardware? Oh, well, maybe Legend of Zelda. Okay, maybe Legend of Zelda. But Breath of the Wild 2 is slated for spring 2023. Is Nintendo really starting their next generation spring 2023? I don't think so. Maybe there's like a new piece of hardware then, but if we get that new piece of hardware, I think that's lengthening their generation. My point here is that I think they're saving 3D Mario, the other game that they tend to use to like launch hardware, the other series. I think that's what's being saved for the next piece of hardware. So the ultimate answer I'm making to this long-winded answer is that I do believe there is a 3D Mario in development. There always is. There is a 3D Mario out there, and it's probably amazing. And it's probably taking a lot of concepts from Mario Odyssey. It's probably building upon that. Mario Odyssey is the best-selling 3D Mario ever. They're gonna follow that up. They're gonna continue that style and improve upon it. Maybe they'll incorporate some other new ideas, make it feel different and fresh, but that open style 3D Mario, that's coming back. So in a way, it will be a Mario Odyssey sequel. It will absolutely be, but I don't think it's going to be titled Super Mario Odyssey 2. It's going to be whatever it's going to be called. The same way how Mario 64 is Mario 64. Mario Sunshine is Mario Sunshine. Mario Galaxy is Mario Galaxy. Mario Odyssey is Mario Odyssey. Whatever that new Mario is going to have its own name, its own branding. I don't think it's gonna follow up the story for Mario Odyssey 2. Mario Odyssey. I just don't. I think it's been too long. I think that window has sailed. But yes, I think that 3D Mario is coming. And if it is sort of like a blurred line situation where that transition, the transitional period between one hardware and another is kind of blurred, maybe this is like a mid-gen refresh that's coming out next year, but also functions like a next generation, kind of like Game Boy to Game Boy Color. If it is something like that, then maybe what happens is Breath of the Wild 2 is that launch title, but 3D Mario is the game that comes out at the holiday. Especially because if there's a Mario movie coming out at the end of this year, like they're gonna want something major Mario to come out within range. Within range, I would say, is within a year. Or a year and a half or so. Within 2 years, really, but, more preferably within a year. So maybe they have that in the works. It should also be noted, we do have the Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, so there is that Mario branding there. But that's more of a third-party effort. It's not a Nintendo thing. So, Nintendo probably has their own Mario effort coming. But I just don't think it's going to be called Mario Odyssey 2. Now, heck, maybe Nintendo at this year's E3 announces Mario Odyssey 2. I'm wrong. It comes out this Christmas, since Breath of the Wild 2 is not coming out this Christmas. Maybe they do that. Maybe. But I just don't think there's a need for a 3D Mario right now. I just don't think there's a need, especially Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out this spring. Save 3D Mario, Prime 4, and something else for next year. I think, if anything, we get something else, like maybe that 2D Donkey Kong comes out this year, or Metroid Prime Remake, right? Alongside Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and Bayonetta 3. Like, that would be the lineup. So, could it be 3D Mario? Maybe, but I don't think so. And if it is, I just don't think it's called Mario Odyssey 2. I think it's something else. But I don't think we're that far off, though, is my main point here. I wouldn't even be surprised if they reveal the next 3D Mario this year. I just don't think it's coming out this year. But we'll see. We will see. Thomas, when you like my take on what we'll get from Metroid around the E3, I appreciate that. Hopefully I'm on to something, right? Hopefully. Ubicore Atomy. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is currently my most anticipated game, even more than Breath of the Wild 2. Do you think we'll get a new trailer in June? Ubicore, I am 95% certain that we will get a new trailer for Xenoblade Chronicles 3 in June. I'm 99.9% certain that we will get a new trailer for Xenoblade Chronicles 3 in the next major General Nintendo Direct. Now, I just want to highlight the difference in my percentages there. So there's a 95% confidence we get a new trailer in June, and there's a 99.9% confidence we get it with the next major Nintendo Direct. The discrepancy there is because I am not 100% committed, convinced that we are getting a brand new General Nintendo Direct to replace the E3 Direct this June. I think probably yes. Hence why 95%, right, in June. But it might be July, right? It might be May. Those are possibilities. Nintendo may not hold themselves to that specific June timing since they're no longer working with E3, but they might work with Summer Games Fest. Or regardless, they may still want it around that time because of the third parties involved, and there's going to be third parties in the Direct. So I just want to kind of highlight that difference in confidence there. But regardless, whenever we do get that Direct, that major summer Direct, whether it's in June, late May, July, God forbid August, but if it's then, but I do think we will have a major Xenoblade Chronicles 3 trailer there. August just seems highly unlikely, by the way. I'm just kind of putting it out there, like my post-traumatic stress from 2020, the COVID year, where there was no General Nintendo Direct, and we talked about Nintendo Direct happening all throughout the year, and it never happened. Like, that was just crazy. But, yeah, for sure. There will be a Xenoblade Chronicles 3 trailer. I would be shocked. Absolutely floored and shocked if there wasn't. The game's coming out September. And from what we've seen of the game, everything we heard from the report by Imran Khan about Xenoblade Chronicles 3 seems to be absolutely true. So the implication there is that other things said in the report are also true about the game. So what am I referring to? Well, basically, they wanted to reveal and release the game last year, but they weren't quite ready. So the game has been pushed up internally, and now it's coming out September. The reason I bring that up is that I think that suggests that the game's probably not getting delayed. It probably is definitely holding to September, and if it's definitely holding to September, you can guarantee, it's pretty much guaranteed that Nintendo's going to be talking about this game a few months beforehand. So definitely expect a trailer for this game by June. I don't think that's at all a lofty, crazy expectation. Maybe they could wait till July and they really drill things up, but I don't think we're waiting till August. So yes, definitely expect a new trailer by then. It's going to be a big deal. And, you know, I totally understand why you might be anticipating Xenoblade Chronicles 3 more than Breath of the Wild 2 right now. Breath of the Wild 2, we don't know that much about. The game keeps getting pushed, well, internally, we don't know. But it's been taking a while, right? Meanwhile, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is coming in hot. We just got the announcement trailer like a month and a half ago or something, 2 months ago, whatever, February, right? And it's coming out this September. Like, it's coming out soon. It's something that's we're gonna be able to play, or it's gonna be tangible very, very soon. So there's a lot of reason to be excited about that. We're gonna be able to play this game soon, and I'm a huge Zelda fan, but I'm also a huge Xenoblade fan. So Xenoblade's in my top 5 favorite Nintendo franchises. So I'm also very excited for it. I don't know. I mean, lately the recent little update for Breath of the Wild 2 has kind of picked up my hype for it again. But Xenoblade Chronicles 3, also greatly anticipating it, for sure. Charles Shradell, Metroid Prime 1 Remake will come first. Will it be this year? We will see. We will see. We will see. I think Prime Remake will first before paid DLC for Dread. I mean, I think it's one or the other. I don't think we're getting paid DLC for Dread if Prime Remake is happening. And I think Prime Remake is happening, so I don't think we're getting paid DLC for Dread. We got the free Dread DLC updates. I think that's it, unless Prime Remake is not happening this year. So, yeah. Yeah, Having Hope 5, yeah, we just kind of touched on it. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 trailer, I think we will get that in the Summer Direct for sure. For sure. Alright, Hobby Story 91 Munoz. Hello there. You added me. Hi. Which IP do you think Nintendo is going to take out from the fridge? I would love a new Sin and Punishment game. Sin and Punishment would be pretty sick. That would be a really awesome project to see Nintendo bring back. I don't think we'll see it. I mean, me being fully honest, right? If we're just talking about likelihood, but we can play Sin and Punishment on the Nintendo N64 Online. So that's pretty cool. I feel like we have a better chance if just in the vein of Sin and Punishment, because we do have other Nintendo games that are similar to that. There's Star Fox and there's Kid Icarus now. I think there's a better chance of one of those being brought out. I mean the most likely one is Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong is coming back. Yeah. Out of all of them. And then I think Pikmin is not too far off. So, think that's coming. Donkey Kong and Pikmin are the ones that I think are in line to be revived before the others. Interestingly, the background music for the podcast tonight is Donkey Kong and Pikmin music. Just saying. Not intention. That wasn't my intention. It's just kind of coincidentally that's what it is. I do think the two most likely Nintendo IPs to be brought out of the fridge or the closet or be dusted off are Donkey Kong and Pikmin. Why are they most likely? Because I think they literally are in development, and we've heard a lot about rumors. Actually, for Pikmin, it's not even rumor, it's fact. And for Donkey Kong, it's rumor, but there's a lot of evidence that it is because of all the other external things, like the Mario movie and the Seth Rogen playing as Donkey Kong, and then the Donkey Kong Park. There's evidence for both. So those are the most likely. So I'll say those. But I talked about earlier how I'd love a whole bunch of Nintendo franchises to be brought back, including Sin and Punishment. I would love to see that. Me being honest, I don't think it will be, but I would love to see it. Maybe Nintendo will see people playing the N64 Online version and think, hey, we could probably do something with this. And it might even be something as simple as that, right? I think sometimes maybe Nintendo has different EPD groups that are experimenting on a game, and not just Nintendo teams in general, not just EPD, but they're experimenting with different gameplay concepts, and they may be like, hey, look, we have this idea for something. They see it and they're like, huh, okay, that's a cool idea, but you know what? We have this Nintendo IP that might be a good fit for that. Attach it. Right? So maybe there's a Nintendo team somewhere that's working on some sort of run and gun shooter, and maybe they're even already exploring some more sort of edgy styles, and maybe they'll be like, oh, what if we were to make a new Sin and Punishment based off this gameplay concept? I don't think it's completely impossible they could come back to it, but I just don't think they're gonna come back to Sin and Punishment because it's a franchise that they know will sell. The way it'll come back, if it comes back, it is going to be if they have a cool gameplay concept that they've been sort of experimenting on, and they decide that one of their older IPs would be a good match for it, and they decide that would be Sin and Punishment. I think that's like the only way. But we'll see what happens, right? You never know what'll happen what the future holds. Hello there, Jugsy. How you doing? So let's see here. Giancarlo. I think you're springing to Brandon White, but you said when Nintendo America's team could add in a paid DLC for Metroid Dread. What would be paid DLC? I feel like, you add just like another campaign, like a mini campaign, like a side area, kind of like an Ori. It has like a new boss or two, and it gives you a new gameplay power-up that would impact the rest of your campaign. But I think it's kind of like an obvious sort of paid DLC option, if they were to do that. Don't think they will, but if they were. But now, let me kind of, actually there's a super chat here. Let me get to that. Taker610, thank you very much for the super chat. Will we get next Mario teaser before movie is out? See, that's tough, right? I actually kind of anticipate that we may even get the Mario trailer in the next Nintendo Direct. And the reason I think that is because, well, one, they gotta show off the trailer sooner or later because the movie's supposed to come out this holiday. And assuming it's not delayed, well, they should probably talk about it, right? So there's that. But also in the September Direct, if I am not mistaken, that's when they revealed the actors and such for the Mario movie. So they've already shown that they're willing to give us non-video game related information in Directs if it's just like a Nintendo thing. And the Mario movie is very clearly a Nintendo thing. So I think they're going to talk about the Mario movie again in a Direct. And I think it's probably going to be a trailer. And it's probably going to be in a summer Nintendo Direct to match that E3 hype, even though E3 is not happening. So I think there's going to be a trailer for that. And if we're getting a trailer for that, I don't know. I feel like we don't need a 3D Mario teaser right now. But could they tie them into each other? Maybe. They could. But I just don't think it's necessary. Especially if we already have Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope. I think, you kind of let those things kind of be their thing. There's also the Mario Kart DLC. Like, they'll show off new Mario Kart DLC during the Direct. I think that's all you need for Mario for now. Doesn't mean 3D Mario's not far off. I think it could come out next year. But we'll see. We will see. Alright. I got a chat jump there. Let's see. Where am I in the chat right now? Let's see. Because I have like 3 different things I'm looking at, there's definitely like, I'm trying to keep up with all, keeping up with live chat's a little harder. But I'll do it. I won't give up. Alright, I found where I was in the live chat. Alright, I'll come back to the live chat. I want to get through some of these questions. So I have, going back to the my YouTube post here. Alright, so Joshua Ayers, I may have touched on this stuff already, some of this stuff already, so forgive me if I don't address all of it. Joshua Ayers, I'm all aboard the Kingdom Hearts 4 hype train, even if it's years away. I know it won't be hitting the Switch, but maybe a next-gen Switch. And obviously PS5 at the end of its life cycle, if it uses Unreal Engine 5. And obviously I hope Kingdom Hearts 4 doesn't suffer too many delays as Kingdom Hearts 3 did, but 4 to 5 years seems likely than Kingdom Hearts 3 6 years development. And yes, talk about Ninja Turtles, Shredder's Revenge, and Cowabunga Collection, like when they could come out in 2022, like if they will show up in the Nintendo Direct. My guess is June, July for Shredder's Revenge, and September, October for the collection. Also, what LEGO games could be possible after Skywalker Saga, and opinions on the game. So I haven't played Skywalker Saga. I usually don't play LEGO games. It does look pretty cool though. I will give you that. Because I can't give you opinions on the game besides that it just looks cool, and I do like Star Wars, so It's appealing somewhat, but I don't know if I'm gonna get around to that. Just too many things I need to get to, like Elden Ring, for example. So I'm not sure on that one. But what other Lego games would I like to see? I mean, what would get me involved? That's interesting. Would have to be something. Let's see. They got Lego Harry Potter. They've done Lego Batman. They've done a Lego a lot already. Like, what could they? What Lego could they do that would be like really cool? That would get me to play. I mean, Lego Star Wars, Lego like Harry Potter. You'd think that would be it. Lego Lord of the Rings. I think they've probably done too, right? If they haven't, they should. I feel like they probably have done Lego Lord of the Rings. Have they done one recently though? It's good. I don't know. Honestly, Lego Star Wars probably would have been it. So I mean, if they're doing it, I'm still not playing it. I don't know what else Lego they should do, but it would be pretty sick. I don't know. I actually feel like I was thinking about something Lego that I would love to see them do. I don't know if it'll get me to play it, but I think it would be a cool concept. Let's see. What was it? No. See, I was thinking about something Nintendo, but the problem with that is that, like, I'd rather just see, like, the Nintendo franchise in a normal way. So, I don't want to, like, pick another video game franchise. If I were to think about, like, shows or movies, I mean, I think that's it. I can't really think of anything. There's nothing that comes to mind. I'm like, yes, do that. I don't know. Maybe How to Train Your Dragon. I don't know how they would make that into like a whole adventure, but it'd be cool because I like dragons and flying, so you know. All right, so here's something that's interesting. Karen Buckley, would you want the rumored Metroid Prime remaster remake to be one-to-one with the original, or more of a Final Fantasy VII remake where the story is noticeably changed and new content added? So I guess there's a difference between what I want and what I expect. What I expect it to be a pretty much one-to-one remake of the original. Is it possible there are some new gameplay additions and upgrades? Yes. I do think that. I don't expect significant new gameplay content because I think Prime 4 is right around the corner. Like, why even bother? There's no point. So I think they're going to really just focus on just getting Prime to look and run in a modern way with this new engine. And they may think of some gameplay updates to really like kind of polish things up. I would love it if they were to add another boss to Magmore Caverns. That's the one main area that doesn't have a boss. So it would be nice if they could do that. Maybe they could add some more cutscenes. Like maybe they could show the space frigate falling and crashing. Because we see it exploding, but you actually explore it later in the game, if I'm not mistaken, but in a destroyed state on Talon 4. So I would love to see them maybe add a few more scenes to kind of build up the narrative a little bit. So, you know, some minor things like that. Maybe speed up the scan visor. Maybe add a few different enemy types or things of that nature. A few little other areas. If you're adding some gameplay mechanics, but ultimately it's going to be basically the same game. Like there's some little things they can do like that, but ultimately I think they're going to be pretty much close to what it is. A melee attack might be neat, which is why I also suggested some new enemy types or just new enemy attack patterns. And again, if they could add a boss to Magmore Caverns, that would be cool, but how that may upset the balance of the game. So there's that to consider. They may also reconsider how they handle the Chozo artifacts, because some people feel that sort of like mess with the flow of the game a little bit too much. So maybe they can think of a way to make it more dynamic. So there are some things that they can maybe rethink a little bit, but ultimately, again, maybe not one-to-one, but fairly close. 7 Remake, while 7 Remake it's just such a drastic change. It's a different game. It's not really a remake, it's a reimagining. It's not a remake. It's a different game that's loosely based on the same story. It's a reimagining. That's what it is. So I don't want them to reimagine Metroid Prime Remake. I want them to just remake it, make it better. 7 Remake is a different game. It's literally a different style of gameplay. It is a reimagining that is deemed as a remake, which this industry in its terms is just funny. But you know, it is what it is. So yeah, I would prefer they just do Prime Remake them. That's it. Now, if the Prime 4 wasn't right around the corner, then I'd be like, okay, if you're gonna remake Metroid Prime, you know, you should add like a Kraid fight in Magmore Caverns, maybe add another like side story like Metroid Prime 1.5. So if you don't know about Metroid Prime 1.5, basically before Prime 2 came out, they were working on this gameplay idea of Samus exploring a space station, but with a lot of horror elements and this evil AI that was changing around the environment, causing like fog effects or closing rooms, shutting down power, messing with Samus's mind and tricking her, trying to take her out like an evil AI in a spaceship. So imagine if they were to go back to that and make it like its own like side kind of gameplay campaign. You know how like there's a lot of remasters that came out on Switch that have like a new campaign, like Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition with Future Connected, Bowser's Fury in 3D World, the epilogue story for Olimar and Louie and Pikmin 3 Deluxe, something like that. So if they were to do something like that would be really cool for Prime Remake. If they were to add like a little campaign like that, like a side story, and explore the Metroid Prime 1.5 concept that we never saw come out. Now, granted, a lot of those ideas went into Prime 2 Echoes, but still, there's a lot of other ideas in there that we didn't see. So that would be really cool. Do not expect that, but, you know, that'd be cool. You know, if Prime 4 is not coming out till 2024, maybe you should do that, Retro Studios. But we'll see what happens. I don't expect that. Moving on here. So, Megaton Menace, I think I kind of addressed this earlier already, but you had asked beforehand, I would like a more in-depth conversation about Kirby and the Forgotten Land now that you've had more time to play it. And I've already I commented on there that I'm kind of thinking about doing like a review of some sort and just other video concepts for that. So I will be getting to that, but I kind of already talked about how Kirby and the Forgotten Land is the bee's knees. It is awesome. It is epic. And I think if you guys are on the fence about Kirby and the Forgotten Land, I think you should not be, because it's a really good game. Like it's not, I don't think it's too easy. It is, I mean, you can make it a cakewalk if you don't go for the 100%ing it, but you should go for every Waddle Dee and getting every blueprint for the power-ups. It's just going to make the game better. Explore Waddle Dee Town. It's fun. Just play the game. You're gonna like it. It's a good game. If you like Kirby, if you like Mario games, if you like kind of like third-person action adventure games, you're gonna like Kirby. It's just a really good game. So definitely, strongly, it's a hard recommend, a very hard recommend. But to just kind of talk a little bit more about Kirby, though, I do feel like Kirby and the Forgotten Land is a strong candidate for some DLC. I would love it if they were just to simply add another little side campaign where you explore a couple other worlds and there's a story there. The way Kirby and the Forgotten Land ends, there is a, I don't really want to spoil anything, but there is a post game. The way the post game is handled, they could kind of do that again, but for like a DLC campaign. So it's a very easy way for it to make sense within the scope and story of the game, I would say. And you could just give us more content. Now, I don't know how the post game ends, so maybe that changes things a little bit. But at least the way our things are right now, I think they could very easily just be like, hey, there's this thing going on. You're just gonna be like a character in the town. Be like, hey, I'm lost in this new town. What's going on here, right? Like, if you were to start the game, if you have the DLC, there might be a little cutscene saying, hey, you should maybe go check this out, right? I forget how to pronounce, is it Elfilin? I confuse it with the boss, but I think Elfilin, the little blue mouse flying thing, will probably tell you, hey, go talk to this person. You go talk to this person, and then it leads to a DLC campaign that'll give you a couple extra worlds to explore. I think that would be perfect. It would make so much sense for Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and I could very much see that happening. And if it's free on Nintendo 64, Nintendo Online's expansion pack, that would be sick. It kind of remains to be seen if that's how Nintendo's going to handle things, because we haven't had too much paid DLC announced since Animal Crossing and Mario Kart, beyond those that are like directly wholly owned by Nintendo projects. So we'll see how they're going to handle that. And I think this summer is a good candidate for it. Now, we may not see that DLC for Kirby announced this summer, maybe September or even early next year. But, you know, within a year, I think it's possible for them to do DLC on that. But, yeah, I think there's easy room for DLC for Kirby in the Forgotten Land. And it's going to be a seller. Heck, Kirby Star Allies had DLC. That game is booty compared to Kirby in the Forgotten Land. There better be DLC for Kirby in the Forgotten Land. It needs it. It doesn't need it. It's a complete perfect game, but they could add more. And I would buy it. And I think a lot of other people would too. It's just a great game. Let's see here. Having hope. I'd like to see discussions on Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and how the first two games are connected, even though they are all different stories. Okay. Actually, interestingly, I see a super chat somewhat related to this. Any story prediction for Xenoblade Chronicles 3? I don't know if we want to talk about it, though, because maybe some 1 and 2 spoilers. So, thank you very much for the super chat, Nishan Kelkar. I'm going to address that, and Having Hope 5, I'm going to address the Xenoblade thing as well. Like, they're connected. So, I'm going to give you my Xenoblade feel. So, in terms of how the stories are connected, I don't think what I'm going to say is really a big deal in terms of spoilers. So if it is, forgive me, but I don't really think it is. Just trust me here. Basically, Xenoblade 1 and 2 are two separate stories. Two separate stories, two separate worlds. But they have a history that is connected in some way. And I'm not going to say exactly how, because that would be spoilers. I'm not going to say exactly how. But they have a history that is connected in some way. And when you play through both games, I mean, if you've played Xenoblade 1 first, and then you go and play Xenoblade 2, you'll get it. Or if you played Xenoblade 2 and then you go and play Xenoblade 1, you'll get it. But towards the end of the game, you will note a strong connection between them that's literal crossover of worlds. I don't want to say exactly how, because that'd be spoilers, but there's a literal crossover world, and if you've played these games through completion, you'll know what I'm referring to. There's a crossover of these worlds, and they are connected. And what's interesting is that I think Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition was done purposefully to set up Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Literally, the epilogue campaign, the extra 15 to 20 hour campaign that was added to Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition is called Future Connected. The name is very on the nose. There is a future where both the worlds for Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2 are connected. And that is the world of Xenoblade Chronicles 3. That's literally been confirmed by Nintendo. When Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was announced, they tweeted it out. It's on the website. This is not like some grand sort of theory. This is a fact. Now, I will say, this was a theory before Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was announced. I was theorizing about this. I'm not saying I was the only one, but I was talking about this hardcore a year or two ago, that Future Connected was all about connecting 1 and 2, and it meant that in the future, there would be a connection of these worlds for a third game. And that's kind of like a basic sort of explanation of how they're connected. Xenoblade X is sort of like a side thing. I would have to kind of go back to the lore there. I have to kind of re-jog my memory because it's been a little bit. Basically, and I could be mistaken. I think I am. I think I would be mistaken, but there is a big calamitous event that occurs that leads to some people going elsewhere, and it's kind of like a side story. I don't think this calamitous event is the same calamitous event that is the history of 1 and 2. But it's similar. So I just look at Xenoblade X as kind of like a side story that has similar elements like the Nopon and such. There may be more to it than that, but pretty much there isn't like any hard confirmation that they're literally a part of the same universe. I think they're technically not. But again, I have to revisit lore on that, so don't hold me to the X part. The X part's a little wishy-washy. So, yeah, that's how they're kind of connected. In terms of how this leads into predictions for Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Now, this isn't hard confirmed yet, but it's been heavily indicated that there is a character from Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and a character from Xenoblade Chronicles 1 that were very significant characters that were part of your party in each game that are big figureheads in Xenoblade Chronicles 3. There is the cat girl with a mask, and then there is the wing girl with a mask. The cat girl is Nia from Xenoblade Chronicles 2, who's a part of your party, who's in love with Rex. And then there is the wing girl, who is Melia, who is also in your party in Xenoblade Chronicles 1, who is in love with Shulk. She is also wearing a mask there. So they both have lived on for however long, and are now these huge central figures in this war of Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and they are on separate sides. Now what's interesting about that, it just further sort of strengthens the strong implication that the people who've come from the world of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and the people who've come from the world of Xenoblade Chronicles 1, their histories are sort of forcing themselves to pit against each other. But why are they being pit against each other? What is causing that? That's what we don't know. And I haven't really thought about this yet, right? Like, what is that central thing that is causing this conflict? Because we know that these characters are good. Why are they fighting each other? What has brought them against each other? And I mean, that's kind of like the big mystery for Xenoblade Chronicles 3. It's going to be one of the big mysterious points, like what's going on with that. And I'm trying to figure it out like right now, because I didn't even really think about this beforehand. What would that be? Well, I'll say that I think in some way they're going to try and tie it to the historical event that led to the big historical event for both that links both 1 and 2. I think it somehow will tie into this situation that's causing both sides to be fighting each other. Because ultimately, I think there's a really good chance that the main big bad, the big evil force is not the army on the side of Nia or the army on the side of Melia. There's something else. There's another party involved. So I think it's somehow related to that. I know I'm being vague, but I don't really want to spoil anything, but I think if for those who are sort of following along, you will sort of understand there. Another thing I'll say, there were like these Nopon that kind of look like they're dressed up like Rex and Pyra. My belief is that those are not Rex and Pyra. I've heard some theories on that. What I do think, though, is that if you think about how there are different Nopon in different games that are always want to sort of like mimic great heroes, they're always like, oh, I'm the great hero pawn, right? I think these two have heard of the history, the historical, heroic figures of Rex and Pyra, and they want to be just like them. Typical Nopon trying to be hero pawns kind of thing, trying to, like, fake it till you make it sort of situation, right? That's pretty much it. But what that suggests is that Rex and Pyra are remembered as heroic figures throughout history. Are they still alive? I'm going to assume no. But there's going to be something to that as well. That will be addressed. And on the flip side, I wouldn't be shocked if the Shulk Fiora situation is also addressed to some extent. And we'll see what happens to, we'll figure out. I think a cool thing about Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is that we're going to learn about what happens to the crew in Xenoblade 1 and 2. There'll be hints to that throughout the story and the lore. And I think that's gonna be cool to sort of find out. So that's a theory of mine. I think that'll be sort of suggested throughout the story, and I think those Nopon of Rex that look like Rex and Pyra is a suggestion to that. On top of that, if we look at carefully at the trailer, there are structures from both 1 and 2, like literal physical structures, landmarks from 1 and 2 are mixed together in 3, which is further strengthening the notion that these worlds are now connected in the future, which kind of goes back to the epilogue story in Definitive Edition, Future Connected. So yeah, the worlds are connected. There was some sort of event that connected them, so that also may have a huge sort of that may play a big role to the story and perhaps the antagonistic force. What causes this grand connection, like this grand merging of 2 separate worlds? Like, if you know about the historical event, if you know about the end of Xenoblade 2, you can kind of see where that might head, especially if you play Definitive Edition and you play through Future Connected. There is some portal stuff going on and some things leaking through. But what leads to these worlds being entirely merged as one? You know, that's also something that I think is going to be a big sort of plot point in 3 that we're going to figure out as we explore. So there's some cool mysteries there. And if you played 1 or 2, that's going to be a lot to enjoy. But if you didn't play 1 or 2, it's just going to be an awesome game with crazy stuff going on. You're going to enjoy it. It's going to be this huge sci-fi fantasy world. It looks like it's going to be an open world or close to it. It's going to be epic. So, yeah, it's good. If you're like a Zelda fan or like an RPG fan, you're going to love the heck out of Xenoblade. So, definitely, I would strongly consider it. Moving on here with the different YouTube questions I had. Abomination. I'd like to see discussions on future Kirby and the Forgotten Land, the potential of the upcoming new 3D Mario game in the future. So we kind of like touched on that already. I think Kirby and the Forgotten Land has found where it should be at. Like, this is where Kirby should be at. I think they got to continue in this direction. There's more ideas they can play around with this. Continue going. Sure, mix things up, try out some new cool things, you know, go for that. But this like perspective of Kirby, like the pseudo, like the 3D, but like almost like 3D world style perspective, continue that. There's a lot that can do there. Build on it. Continue to build on that because there's a lot there. Now, and what's interesting, right? Because I love how you bring up 3D Mario, right? Because there is a similarity between them. What's next for 3D Mario, right? I do think it's in development. I don't think it's going to be called Mario Odyssey 2. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. I think when you look at what they did with Bowser's Fury, I do think that's somewhat of a suggestion to ideas that they're playing around with. And basically, I think they're going to perhaps even make maybe an even more open Mario game. Like, think about this. They used... Man, I forget his name. The orange dinosaur that surfs around, right? The Yoshi replacement, basically. Like, I forgot his name, but you surf around with him. He's basically your mount for Bowser's Fury. Like, it's almost like... I mean, Bowser's Fury was an open world environment. And you had a mount. You know, like, think of it almost like Lake Lapcat and Orange... I need to find out the name. I need to. Bowser's Fury... Orange dinosaur. What are you? What is his name? Plessy. Thank you, Google. Yeah. So Lake Lapcat and Plessy are basically like Hyrule Field and Epona, right? Like, you have this terrain or body of water or some sort of explorable plane, and you have this creature you used to explore. I kinda am fascinated by the idea of Nintendo taking 3D Mario in this direction. And I guess the weird issue here is that if you do that, you're starting to delve into Zelda-esque territory, and it's more of an open world game instead of a sandbox. I don't know. It's hard to say what they're gonna do, but if they were to go in this direction, I mean, obviously you have fast traveling, right? So ultimately it won't really matter too much, but maybe they basically take the Mushroom Kingdom and it's more of a seamless thing. What if you can go from like New Donk City to Fossil Falls? Like, you see how you get there. Like, you can travel from one point to another. Will they do that? I guess the question is, why bother? Like, is there any benefit of being able to do that for Mario? Like, for what Mario is, does that make any sense? And that's where I'm like, maybe not, right? But maybe they still have these large areas as they already have, but perhaps they go a little larger and they think more about how, like, there's just various mini areas within a larger area, right? So, you know, perhaps it is a situation where there are worlds and each world is separate, but these worlds are larger than maybe we've even seen in Mario Odyssey, and there's just like different areas. They're almost like those individual mission areas, but they each have like their own series of challenges. Basically Bowser's Fury, but on a grander scale. Like, what if Bowser's Fury and how the level sort of progresses and adapts, what if that's basically like a world in the next Mario game, right? And there's like maybe 4, 5, 6 of them, something like that. I can see that. And it really is just kind of expanding upon what Odyssey is, because in Odyssey, the different worlds that you explore, you going in and out of them. Well, you don't have to, but the game sort of leads you to leave and go back to them. But as you progress in them, then there's certain like plot points for each kingdom, and the kingdom changes. I think that thinking is cool, where you have these big sort of sandbox areas and there's a lot to do in them, and they're sort of open and such, and there's different things there, but there are certain things you can do that sort of evolve or progress the story and the environment for these individual kingdoms. Like, what if they were to continue to build on that, right? And maybe there is some sort of dynamic event going on, like in Bowser's Fury, it's Fury Bowser, right? So what if they kind of build on that and kind of merge the concepts of Bowser's Fury with Mario Odyssey? But on the flip side, you know, a lot of people like Galaxy. There are a lot of Galaxy-like levels within Mario Odyssey. Continue with that too. Like, have it just basically a perfect marriage of all these really cool 3D Mario concepts in one. Odyssey was close. Just kind of, you know, spruce up that balance a little bit more. I think, you know, that's kind of what I'm sort of thinking for the next Mario. That may be fairly vague, but, you know, I think that's kind of where they're headed. You just look at what they've done, right? Like, there is a direction there, I think. Let's see here. Let me check in with the live chat, see where you guys at. Okay, very good. We've been going on for about 2 hours, but there's still different things I want to address. So let me check in with Twitter. I'll come back to the live chat here. All right, Rikuto. How about you tackle the subject of misinformation on Twitter? LOL. A lot of people seem to believe Unreal Engine 5 doesn't support Switch, even though it does, or the Nintendo doesn't own and didn't fund Bayonetta 3. So, I mean, you're right. The Unreal Engine 5 has been said that it will support Nintendo Switch. You can just Google it. Like, it will support Nintendo Switch. So, you know, Kingdom Hearts 5, which is run on Unreal Engine 5, in theory they could get to run. They would just scale things back a lot. But it can work. And with Nintendo and Bayonetta 3, it is a unusual situation, but Bayonetta 3 is not coming on any other platform but Nintendo, because Nintendo is funding Bayonetta 3. They are helping to publish the game. Now, in the future, is it possible that Nintendo will stop funding Bayonetta and the partnership between Platinum Games and Nintendo will dissolve to some extent? And could these Bayonetta games be released on other platforms? In the future, I can see that happening. It's not impossible. It's kind of like Wonderful 101, right? Wonderful 101 at one point was funded by Nintendo, was published, and Platinum Games developed it. But, you know, eventually, years later, they wanted to sort of remaster it, and they released it on various platforms that were outside of Nintendo. Could that happen with the Bayonetta series? I think eventually, someday, if Nintendo starts funding Bayonetta, they will maybe take these games and release them on other platforms. That can happen. But the way things are right now, that's not going to be happening. There is a partnership between Nintendo and Bayonetta. Nintendo helps to fund these games so they can happen. Bayonetta 2 would have never happened if Nintendo didn't come in to fund the project. And a lot of people can't really seem to figure that out. It's just one of those things where I think because the franchise started on a non-Nintendo system during an era that was very anti-Nintendo, there is a decent following that were kind of pissed that Bayonetta 2 came out on Nintendo Wii U, which also wasn't a popular system at the time. So, you know, there was some vitriol there, right? There was some backlash, there was some hate. And I guess there's a little bit of a trickling of that still that we see on social media. But I think it's worth noting social media oftentimes is just a vocal minority. And what that means is that there are some people, a small group of people, a minority, and it's a relative term, right? Relative to the masses, that are outspoken, that speak more on the subject than everyone else, because it's very important to them. And thus, what happens is, because they're the only ones talking about it, and put this on social media, it creates this narrative. It appears that perhaps there are more people that care about this or feel about this than there really are. Hence a vocal minority. It can be misleading, right? Now, I'm going to say something. I know some people may not like it, and I'm not trying to pick sides here. You know, you're entitled to your own feelings, right? But it is an example. You look at the Pokemon situation and how many people were upset about national decks being cut and things of that nature. There was a lot of outcry for that. And I'm not saying that there isn't a large amount of people that don't feel that way, but ultimately I would still describe that as a vocal minority, because what did we see? We saw significant sales for Pokemon Sword and Shield. Still very, very, very strong sales. So I think what that suggests, right, is that yes, there are people who have problems with it, but ultimately not enough people had enough of a problem with it to actually not buy and play the game. Because Pokemon Sword and Shield is still one of the best-selling Pokemon games yet. So, point is, even though there may be a large audience that feels that way, in relation to the overall masses, it's not significant enough to impact the sales negatively. Not to any sort of discernible degree. Anyway, yeah, so totally, Unreal Engine 5 can be on Switch. Nintendo and Bayonetta, they fund Bayonetta. They don't wholly own Bayonetta, but as things stand right now, it effectively is a Nintendo-only franchise. But I guess the difference is because Nintendo hasn't totally bought out all the rights to it. In the future, if this partnership dissolves in some way, we could see Bayonetta go on other platforms, but as things currently stand, that is not happening. So it's unlikely. Nintendo and Platinum Games get along nicely. So for the extended future, not happening. And that's pretty much it for that. But, you know, in general, there is misinformation. I mean, that's the internet, right? People tend to believe what they see, and oftentimes people don't actually want to check. A fascinating thing that I think sometimes happens is that someone will say something and someone will be like, oh, I don't believe that. And then you'll say, okay, Google it, check it, it's true. And then the person will be like, oh, okay. And they don't actually check. They don't actually check, and that person was wrong, but because they said it's a fact, check the internet, they just assume, oh, okay, well, if they're willing, they're basically bluffing, right? So then they believe it, but what they said wasn't true. That happens all the time. And maybe the person didn't even necessarily mean to lie, that's what they remembered, right? And I'll tell you, like, there are things that I talk about And I kind of just do it based off memory sometimes, and then I go back when I'm making a video about it and I kind of fact check myself. I'm like, oh, I was actually kind of off about that, right? Like, I do make mistakes. I mean, everyone does. For example, I think like a podcast or two ago, I was talking about how when Nintendo announced the delay for Breath of the Wild, they put out like a YouTube video for it. I was so confident that came out in 2016. It actually happened in 2015, so I was off by a year there. It was not intentional, right? Then ultimately, it didn't really defeat my argument that I was making at the time, but, you know, there are some minor implications there, right? Because it wasn't an entire match to this situation here where we have a delay, but the delay is only but still 9 months to a year from now. Yeah, a year from now it's coming out, as opposed to like closer to 2 years with the Breath of the Wild situation. So it's a slightly different scenario there, but you know what happens. Point is, right, regardless of there's intent to lie or not, I think most people, if you care to know the truth, you should do your due diligence and look stuff up. Do your research. You know, you never really know if something's true or not until you go ahead and verify it for yourself, right? Now, if you want to have confidence in someone, you know, that's fine. But, you know, if you're going to be spreading information, be aware where it's coming from, right? And if you want people to believe you, you should at least make sure to verify what you're saying is true. So, you know, that's kind of like what it is. And, you know, that's why sometimes when I say something, I might be like, to my recollection, as I remember it, or I'm paraphrasing here, because I try to be very, very sincere, right? Like, not everything I say is 100%. Like, do I do my research? Yes, but when we're doing a podcast here, right, where it's a few hours long, and there's dozens and dozens of questions and ideas, I haven't researched literally everything, right? Or maybe I forgot something. Like, that happens all the time. Everyone does. I just try to make it clear that, hey, look, I might be slightly off here, so just be aware, take it with a grain of salt, maybe double check the facts there, right? Because I don't want to mislead. I don't want to provide misinformation. And in a lot of my videos, I try to provide sources. Now, that does kind of vary, right? Because if it's something I've talked about like 10 times in a row already, I'm not going to provide the same source every single time, right? Like, the news has already been out for a while. Otherwise, every video would have like 100, 200 sources, because it's kind of like a buildup of knowledge, right? Still, you know, you got to be careful of what you're seeing, and you should verify, because there is a lot of misinformation out there. Absolutely. Let's see here. Paint Fat Purple. When will we see Breath of the Wild 2 again? June, September, December? When will we get a Wind Waker announcement? Basically, I think we got to be looking towards summer. Like, that's pretty much it. Like, I think summer is when most of these announcements are going to be coming. And yeah, summer. The summer direct. Presumably June. If Breath of the Wild 2 is coming spring 2023, it will be in the June direct to some effect. I think we will see gameplay there. I think there'll be a Nintendo Treehouse event showing off actual gameplay, like extended gameplay for 15 to 20 to 30 minutes, maybe more. I do believe that. But if Breath of the Wild 2 is vacant again, to me, at this point, based off everything we've seen, I think that actually would be suggestive that the game might be pushed up a little bit more. Now, when they say spring 2023, my immediate thought is a March release to close out the fiscal year, as they've done with other major games like Breath of the Wild, Kirby the Forgotten Land, Monster Hunter Rise, Animal Crossing New Horizons. That's what I'm thinking right now. But if it doesn't have a relatively decent presence at E3, to me, that's sort of suggesting this game might not even be ready for then. Now, and if it's not coming out March, I kind of see it like coming out like the second half of next year. But I have a hard time believing that. I think because they were even more specific this time around with a spring 2023 release date, I think that says that they're honing in on a time. They're very close. The estimate is more accurate now. And by E3, they should be 9 months away. We've seen a situation like this before, like with Animal Crossing. I do think there will be footage and gameplay on the game, and there you go. Like, we're gonna get that. We're gonna see that summertime. At least a trailer. Yeah, they're gonna do that. We've barely seen anything on this game, really. So there's tons to show, and I think Nintendo will be doing disservice to that game's hype by not doing so. Now, in terms of Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, because they're gonna be basically ports of remasters, so, you know, like, I don't even think they're like that significant. Like, they're not even, this is gonna be their third release at least. I don't think they're gonna be that big of a deal. Like, they probably will be. There's a big outcry for them. They're probably gonna sell really well. Nintendo may do some decent fanfare for it. But what I'm getting at here is that I don't think it's gonna be something that would replace Breath of the Wild 2 at E3. I think it's still mentioned. I think it's still announced. But I don't think it's gonna be like, hey, we're still working on Breath of the Wild 2. We have nothing to show today, but here is Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD. You may have played it a few years ago, and you may have played it a few years ago before that. You're going to be playing it for the third time and buying it for a third time on Nintendo Switch, and we've changed nothing about them. But they're coming out together. I don't think that's happening. Like, it may happen, but I don't think it replaces Breath of the Wild 2. It's just, it'll be something that'll be supplemental. And I think it would come out like maybe like September or like August. Late summer to early fall. That's the kind of my window. So, yeah. Paying Fat Purple is also asking, where's the damn Triforce in Breath of the Wild and the sequel? Well, I've talked about this before. The Triforce, Zelda has it at the end of Breath of the Wild. In the sequel, my theory is that Ganondorf, since he's going to be playing a role in Breath of the Wild 2, since he's literally the big cause of everything, as it actually be an individual this time around, he will reclaim his Triforce of power. Link has something going on with his hand where the Triforce is usually supposed to show off. There's a lot of this green stuff, which is kind of like, you know, symbolizing the Triforce of Courage and Pharaoh and stuff. So I think maybe Link finds the Triforce of Courage in Breath of the Wild 2. Zelda goes missing. What's going on? Where's all the Sheikah technology? Is it missing? Is it underground? Why is it all blue in Breath of the Wild? Well, that's maybe hinting towards the Sheikah, who always follow Zelda, and the power of wisdom. So there you go. So you got like the red power, Triforce of Power, Ganondorf, blue, Sheikah, Zelda. By the way, Giga are red as well for Ganondorf. And then the missing tribe, maybe the Zonai, who are green, got the green energy, these missing people with the whispers, Triforce of Courage, and Link, who traditionally throughout previous Zelda games was garbed in green, but not in Breath of the Wild, which could be an allusion to why he's missing the Triforce of Courage. Not literally, but, you know, just kind of like symbolism. And perhaps, probably unintentional, but that's just how things shake out. So, there's an answer to that. You have another question here, though. Did Demise escape from the Master Sword, or did he fade away ages ago? I believe the Master Sword ate away at Demise. But it's clear his spirit has continued on with Ganondorf and the Calamity and the Malice and such. I don't think, if Demise is alive, it's because his spirit of hatred has been reincarnated through Ganondorf. And I think in the first trailer there's an allusion to that, because there is a silhouette and it's more of a... The shape is similar to Demise, even though it's for Ganondorf. And I think that's simply paying homage to that idea, and maybe since he's a reincarnation, he will take up a form similar to that by design. And that's pretty much it. I don't think it's literally Demise. I think Demise is done. But there will be perhaps a nod to that history of Demise. Ian Boast, do you anticipate there being another server test for Switch Sports before release? That's a tough question. My opinion, I think they should do it. Will they do it, though? I think they can get away without it. So that's why I'm kind of... I wish I could be like, yeah, it's going to happen. Or, no, it's not going to happen. The truth is, I'm divided 50-50 on it. I don't have any source telling me if it's going to happen one way or the other. It is getting pretty close to release already. We're within 3 weeks. So, less than 3 weeks. Like, today's the 11th, 21. That's math. That's more. We're less than 3 weeks away. So they would have to announce it like this week, and it would have to be like for like this weekend or something. So I think no. I think people are already getting review copies. I'm gonna say no, but I'll be very happy if I'm wrong, because I would love to play it sooner. Now, what they could do, maybe it won't be a server test, maybe it'll just be like a demo or like a trial, just kind of hype people up. But I don't think they really need to like do a stress test necessarily, because it's just kind of too early. It's already too late for that, I think. So I don't think it would be like a server test necessarily, but maybe if they want to like hype up the game to get more people to try it out, they might do some sort of like trial weekend thing again. But that's what it would be. It wouldn't be specifically to like stress test the servers. They may still do that. Maybe they could authorize a couple things like last minute, but I think the main point would be to just sort of like just advertise the game to people. All right, Triple J hyped for 3 hopes. You could talk about these leaked screenshots from Amazon for 3 hopes and talk about the leaks from retailers in general. Yeah, I could touch on it. I don't... to tell you the truth, I didn't know too much about this until today. Let me see if I can share it for everyone watching here. Give me a second. One moment, people. There we go. Alright, so that's my Twitter. Alright, follow me on Twitter, by the way. Add on just restart. Anyway, so we got some screenshots here. And with the first shot, it looks very similar to what we saw in Three Houses itself. I mean, and it's supposed to remind you of it, right? I think visually it's... I mean, neither were like incredible lookers, right? So I am kind of curious if there is going to be sort of like a similar sort of like monastery style gameplay where you're going to have time roaming around, interacting with the characters, building up relationships. That would be really cool. If they can bring that into this where you're actually like working on relationships, that would be neat, because that would feel very much like Three Houses. And yeah, that would be something neat if they could bring that into it. I don't know if they will. But maybe. And this is just kind of showing the map, showing like the classic style sprites. What's fascinating about this is that because Warriors has like a soft like sort of strategy element of interacting with the map, it sort of relates a little bit to Fire Emblem already, because Fire Emblem is a strategy game. So I wonder if they'll delve a little bit deeper into that. I can't really make too much of it from here, surface level at least. But it would be nice to see that, for sure. Like, I've played both Fire Emblem Three Houses, and I've played Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity and a few other Warriors games. But I don't like remember like what the different button combinations are, so I can't even really make too much of what these mean. I think obviously you're going to have the triangle effect from Fire Emblem. Like, I think they're going to have that in there. I think that's kind of like a given. I think here with the percentages, that is showing like the chances of success. So what's neat is that they may have more of a, hey, look, send this party here, send this party here. And, you know, it's something you can kind of already do, but there's just these different elements here that will be relating it more to Fire Emblem. I don't know if they'll speed that up a little bit, but it is kind of cool to see that. Absolutely. So, wrong thing. I forgot where... Oh, there we go. Just, like, cycled through a whole bunch of stuff. Anyway. I think I'm caught up almost... there's a few other Twitter stuff. So I'm going to finish this one. I'm getting the Twitter stuff out of the way now. Alright, so Kool-Aid asked... Potential indie world this week. I don't know. I don't follow indie world too much, so I can't tell you with certainty, but there are usually 1 or 2 between directs, so, you know, there should be another one. I just not big on the timing because I haven't really followed it too much, but there should be at least 1 more before a summer direct, maybe 2. Like some sort of indie event. I think the timing here would be interesting, because often as we'll get like something indie like a few weeks before direct. I think right now we're in the window where we're fairly spread out between one direct and another. So this could be like a tide over until then. I could see that. If not, yeah, it's not crazy. I don't know. I just don't know because I don't follow the dates for the indie stuff too much. My Switch Sports expectations. So my Nintendo Switch Sports expectations. I talked about this earlier. I think the game is going to be the best-selling game compared to Ring Fit Adventure, Fitness Boxing, Nintendo Labo, Game Builder Garage. I think it's going to be significantly better, actually. And I think Nintendo's going to be supporting this game for a while. We know we're going to be getting the free DLC updates like the golf mode and stuff. But I think after that, there'll be some paid DLC. Maybe they can give us like the Pilot Wing style of gameplay from that we could fly through Woohoo Island and Resort, or like the jet skis as well. Maybe they can bring in boxing, maybe another new sport, maybe like a basketball one or something. There's definitely a lot they can add there, and I could see that being paid DLC after the free DLC updates. And I actually feel like these advertised free DLC updates almost some sort of like softening the blow per se of having paid DLC for more sports afterwards. That way, I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily what the idea behind it is, but when you have these free DLC updates that come out after the game, you know, you're adding other stuff there, and it at least dispels the notion that they were working on paid DLC beforehand and then released it after, and then they saved it to release afterwards for more money. It suggests the opposite, that once they're done working on the game and the base game and the free DLC updates, they will then move on for the paid DLC content after the fact. So I think there's a plan there. I think Switch Sports is going to be sick. I think it's going to be super well polished. It's going to be really good. It's going to be fun to play. I'm hyped. I'm very, very excited for Nintendo Switch Sports. I can't wait. You were asking about new trailer for Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes. You know, I can actually see that getting a new trailer before a summer direct. I mean, if it's coming out in June, like, yeah, actually. And also, same for Mario Strikers. I think both those games could get info beforehand. And you know what? With those games coming out in June, it almost makes me wonder if a big Nintendo Direct could happen sooner. Like, what if it happens in May? You know? It's possible. I definitely can see a trailer happening. Yeah, I can definitely see a trailer happening sooner, for sure. Especially because Age of Calamity is not Age of Calamity, but you know, this Warriors game it's not like in-house Nintendo, right? It's made by Konami, right? So I could see them. Is it Konami? Am I getting my brain all fuzzled up? I am kind of running on fumes here. I had one taco. I'm gonna eat more after the podcast. Can't even type. Developer Omega Force, publishers, and Koei Tecmo, not Konami. Yeah, duh. All right. I knew there was something off about that, and that's why I had to double check there. Yeah. Yeah. And I would love to do like live call-ins, like a radio show. I got to kind of figure out how I would do that, but that would be like a cool thing to do for the show, for sure. So good idea, Kool-Aid. At Lakito, bro. J.R. Tolkien, an all Zelda episode would be sick, but not today, obviously. Obviously not today. All right, so I got all the Twitter stuff out of the way. Let's get back to live chat here to catch up there. I am trying to. I'm gonna kind of roll through here. Charles Trudell added me. Ring Fit Adventure is half hardcore, half casual, so because of that, I see Switch Sports just a bit less than Ring Fit, but Ring Fit sold a lot. Yeah, I mean, I'll argue that Nintendo Switch Sports has that history of Wii Sports, and I think Nintendo Switch Sports actually is going to appeal to a larger audience than Ring Fit Adventure. Now, the neat thing about Ring Fit Adventure is that it is like a neat concept, right, of being able to sort of like play like an RPG, but also like, and you know, kind of an adventure RPG, but also like exercise. So that's a neat concept. It's new, but I think Nintendo Switch Sports is like, hey, play with your friends, you know, have fun, multiplayer. Like, it's kind of like the quintessential like sports multiplayer motion control game. I feel pretty good about Switch Sports outperforming Ring Fit Adventure. Ring Fit Adventure is like an interesting concept that is done relatively well, but Switch Sports is something that, regardless if you care about like exercising, not a lot of people are gonna be into it, but it can still hit that crowd who want to sort of exercise while they play games. Yes, Nintendo Prime, we're doing a solo cast today. That's just how things shook out at the end. But we're doing it. We're rolling through it. Hopefully you guys are still enjoying the show. Birdman Senpai, hello there. It would be cool to get more Dread DLC lock, but I mentioned it earlier. I think we only get more Dread DLC if, you know, we don't get like Metroid Prime Remake this year or something. Mandy Lee Plays, hello, how are you? Joshua Mosteller, hello. Alright, I'm gonna focus on the ads for now. Let's see here. The Megaton Menace had added me a while ago. Buying a new system every few years is lame. The longer it takes for a new system, the better. I agree. And I would prefer Nintendo to stick to the 2-year cycle. And given that, you know, I think if the Switch 2 comes out second half of 2023, that's fine. Like, that fits a 2-year cycle. Like, every 2 years is some new hardware. And I think they'll be fine. If it comes out early 2023, I think it just shouldn't be like Switch 2. It should just be like a mid-gen refresh then. But that's like the earliest possible. We'll see how things shake out. Giancarlo Adamy, developers of Halabortre. I think I got to this earlier, right? Developers of Halabortre stated more 3D mainline Kirby games can be in the future. Yeah, we did. Giancarlo, several rumors state Nintendo EPD is developing a 2D Donkey Kong game. Absolutely, that is part of the rumor, but other rumors have suggested that it's not clear if we know if it's 2D or 3D. But I do side more 2D-esque. Nintendo, yes, Golden Sun will be a great game for Nintendo to bring back. I'd love to see that. Quacky-chan added me. We know for a fact we're eventually getting Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. Will Nintendo bundle these two, or would it make more sense to keep them separate? So, I would just like to nitpick a little there. We don't know for a fact that we're getting them. I do believe with great confidence that we will get them. And I've talked about this before, but I'd like to... So, it's just like a personal thing. So, there is a difference between the word think and the word know. But think about how often people say, oh, I know this is going to happen. I know this is going to happen. And then they've been wrong. So did they ever actually know? They didn't. Were they lying? Maybe. But oftentimes, they just thought they did. But they said no because they thought with great confidence. So, what am I getting at here? We can think with great confidence that Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD are coming out this year. Or at least are coming eventually, to your point. But we don't know that for a fact. Until it actually happens, we do not actually know. And we can't even say that it's slated to come out because Nintendo has not officially announced it. But yes, I do believe that there is a high likelihood that we will eventually see Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD on a mainline Nintendo system in this modern day. Probably Switch, if not the next one. Now, when they come out, that does impact things. And how Nintendo handles that will be interesting. It's tricky, because if Nintendo were to do a thing where they put out both together as a bundle pack, and it comes out for $60, and it comes out this year, let's say September, comes out September, that would just be a little strange. It would be a little strange. It would be a little strange because that's two full 3D Zeldas, and Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out. We're gonna assume March, assuming they hold to that spring release timing. It's a little strange. And also, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is coming out in September. I said September, it might not be September, right? But let's say, I would actually prefer it to be August or July. Me being frank here, given that the reports, maybe they can't announce them like a month or two in advance, so, it could be that. And I think that makes more sense because a few more months before Breath of the Wild 2. Actually, yeah, me thinking more about it, I feel like Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, if it is bundled, it should be kind of like a summer release, late summer release. And they can announce it fairly. There's not have to be like a long window there. I can kind of see them doing it, because you might think, oh well, this would be the same Nintendo that took a $50 Tropical Freeze, added basically nothing but Funky Kong, and comes out with a game 4 years later with like no additional content and raise the price by $10 when the game on Wii U has gone down to $20. So you look at it from that perspective and you might think, would they really bundle both? Would they really do that? The same Nintendo that took Skyward Sword HD and just, basically it's like the game running on a Dolphin, and it has some changed up controls, but there's no real new content added to the game. And there you go. I actually think there's some nice things for Skyward Sword HD. I think it looks and runs very clean on Switch. They do think it looks nice with an HD and upscaled. I think the textures do look fairly clean. Adding 60 frames per second is actually a big deal. And having traditional controls and motion controls on Switch that both work relatively well, I think those are all actually nice big deals. And then also you can move around the camera. Like, they actually did not a lot for Skyward Sword HD. In my opinion, they actually did. But they didn't add new content to play. And they didn't remake the visuals. It was just basically remastered. And it was some basic stuff to do that. And it looks nice because of how the style of the game is. But point is, they released that for $60. Would Nintendo take two of those games and put them for $6 together? It's tough, but I kind of am inclined to say yes. And the reason I'm inclined to say yes is because these games already got the HD remaster treatment on Wii U. They've already done that, right? Like, I don't think if Nintendo were to come out with Skyward Sword HD again 4 years from now on Switch 2, that it would still be $60. It wouldn't be. It would be cheaper than that. So I don't think that. Now, I am kind of curious if they'll release them separately, or maybe they'll just do one and they'll do another time. That's a possibility. They could just do one and do another time. Like, what if they just release Wind Waker HD this year, Breath of the Wild 2 comes out March, and then maybe 2024 they come out with Twilight Princess HD. Maybe they do that. And if they do that, if they do come out individually, I'll say I do not think they'll be $60. I don't think that. I think they'll be cheaper than that. They'd be like $40. If they come out together, I can kind of see the 60. It is a unique situation, but I can kind of see that. Now, the tricky part is that they do have to rework some things, because it's a situation where they the Wii U doesn't translate over to Switch the same way. They have to change some things. There are some mechanics from Miiverse that are not, you can't do that on Switch, right? So they actually have to go in and change some things. So excuse me, it's a little tricky, but I'll say that if they come out together, I think they will be $60. If they come out separately, they will be cheaper than $60. They'll be like $40 each or something. And that's just kind of how I see it. Maybe they'll offer them as individual releases on the eShop for $40, $39.99 USD, but they'll still be $60 retail. I could see that. So that's what I'm guessing. Don't know, but we'll see what happens. Birdman Senpai said Pilot Wings. Pilot Wings. Pilot would be great. That's another Nintendo franchise I would love to see come back, or at least give us that flying mini game in Nintendo Switch Sports like we saw in Resort. Major Blazer, hello there. Thank you for the greetings. Guy you don't know, how familiar are you with the Mario and Luigi RPG series? Not that much, to be totally frank. That's the series I want to see come back the most, but with Alpha Dream gone, I'm unsure if Nintendo can do it justice. I think Nintendo could figure it out. I think Nintendo could hire some of the people from then. I think they could put it together. Will they put it together? That remains to be seen. We have the Mario plus Rabbids series kind of going right now, which is different, but also somewhat similar because it's like a pseudo RPG like series that's based off Mario already. And the Paper Mario series has sort of transitions to be more of a adventure style kind of game. So it's tricky. I don't know when we could see it, but I feel like we haven't seen the end of Mario and Luigi, and I could see it being maybe like a digital eShop release or something at some point in the future. Maybe it still does get a physical release, but I don't see it being a $60 game is my point. So, you know, I think unless they, I don't see it being a $60 game. I could see like an eShop release, a digital release at some point that's like $30-40. You know, maybe they could still do a physical release. It just wouldn't be price is high. It just wouldn't be $40 or $50. The $10 discount. We've seen that with like, for example, like WarioWare. I think it's $50. Let's see here. Moving on with the chat. Birdman sent by Adam. Nintendo's expanding their HQ even more. Of course, they gotta, you know, expand their empire so they can take over the universe. They're gonna do it. Of course, they're always expanding. Quacky-chan, consider Kirby the Forgotten Land an evergreen title. Yeah, I do. I think I do, Quacky-chan. I think it has that kind of potential. More so than Star Allies. I think it's gonna outpace Star Allies, and I think it will continue to sell. The only weird kind of consideration is that it's so late to Switch's life cycle, and because Star Allies is already there, I wonder if people will see Kirby the Forgotten Land and be like, okay, we're getting that. But I mean, like, I think from like if you understand what it is, like people are like, oh, 3D adventure Kirby game, I want that. 3D adventure Kirby game, I want that. So if you look at it in that way, anyone who wants to play Kirby the Forgotten Land should be the quintessential Kirby game to play. So from that perspective, I think it should be evergreen. The question is, will that register in the minds of consumers moving forward? That's up to Nintendo to market that properly. Maybe they've done it, we'll see. I'm inclined to say yes, though. Let's see here. Rel Adamy, hello, and everyone. Hello there, my friend. I see I'm pretty behind on the live chat, so I'm trying to, like, catch up. Charles Shadell, Adamy, yep, Frontiers this year. Man, that was like an hour ago. I'm really behind the chat, I see. All right. Charles Shadell, so Adamy, funny indeed that you put this as tonight as the music. Yeah, because I think the two most likely revived Nintendo franchises are Pikmin and Donkey Kong. Yeah, okay. Definitely have missed a lot of things here in the chat, guys. Thanks for sticking around, though. Giancarlo Adamy. According to NVIDIA leak, Bayonetta 3 is coming to PC. It's not out of the question. You know, if Nintendo's okay with that, I can kind of see it. It would be like, it would have to be a timed exclusive. You know, maybe there's other, maybe, yeah. I mean, you know, it won't come out on Xbox or PlayStation, but PC is like that kind of middle ground. Like we see like Monster Hunter Rise, for example, which we know Nintendo also put a lot of money into to get happen on Switch. So, you know, timed exclusives are a little different. And also PC, right? Like that is like I don't normally consider PC when I'm talking about like exclusives, but obviously PC is a huge market, so there is that. But it doesn't like impact like Nintendo versus Microsoft, Sony. You know what I mean? Maybe you don't. Maybe I'm just speaking nonsense. Novus talks. To me, the delay means we won't see Breath of the Wild 2 in the Direct. It's too soon. They can afford to wait until September to market it. Yeah, but also, like, I guess it is weird because we're not getting specifically E3, right? So like maybe Nintendo doesn't see it as major of a situation to show it off. I'll tell you what, they could get away with that without it, but I think they would need to have like a major Breath of the Wild 2 direct later on. I don't think we're gonna go. I think for a fact, I think with great confidence that there will be a Breath of the Wild 2 presence in a June Nintendo Direct, if there is a June Nintendo Direct. Maybe it doesn't have as huge of a presence as it would have, given the delay, but it will still be there, and I think they'll be like, okay, here's a little bit, there will be even more details later this year. I think they'll say something like that, if there's not like a big presence there, but I kind of think there will be. I'm not saying it's going to be like half the show, but I think they'll have a trailer and it'll have a treehouse segment. Like, I think that'll happen. LP added me. Splatoon 3 is supposed to come out in the next 4 months, and we really don't know much about the game. Do you think it could be delayed? No, I don't. And the reason why I don't think it's going to be delayed is because we are getting updates. Like, I know some Splatoon fans are a little rabid for more on the game, but if you're a Splatoon fan, you're eating a lot better than a Zelda fan right now. We got a new trailer confirming Salmon Run in the last major Nintendo Direct. We had an update in the latest Nintendo Direct. And then the Nintendo Direct before that, we had another trailer update. So my take, everything's fine. Don't worry, we're good. But also, when they gave us the Nintendo Direct and they showed us the game and they said summer, but they didn't tell us a specific date, and they announced games in June, games coming out in June, to me that says that if it is coming out, the very earliest it's July, but I'm thinking maybe August, like June or July or August is when this game is coming. So you just gotta wait a little bit. I'm not worried about the game getting delayed. Although, with Breath of the Wild 2 getting delayed, it does make me wonder, would they push it up a little bit? I'm gonna say no. I think it's maybe August. Yeah, maybe it's coming out in August, you know? I can see that. But I'm not worried about it getting delayed. I think the game looked like it was very far along back last year. So, I'm not too worried. Like, they gave us a season. I think that's the important consideration here. Once they're giving us a season, they are not that far off. There are exceptions. I mean, Advance Wars was delayed twice, so, but once is because of the war, like not because the game wasn't done. And also because I think they just didn't think it benefited it for it to be coming out in December like that when they already had a lot of releases around that time. I think they just wanted to have some breathing room. Also, it's not like directly in-house Nintendo working on that. Actually, it's the same team behind Shantae. Let's see here. Thomas, when you're heading out, have a good night. Thank you very much. Hello there, Super Chris. Ridiculous Rich 89. Andres, do you think it's a tad bit odd that Nintendo has no release date for Splatoon 3 or Bayonetta 3? I just talked about Splatoon 3. I'm not too worried yet. But, you know, after the Breath of the Wild 2 burn, you know, maybe I should temper my expectations a bit. I think because we've been getting updates on the game every direct, we shouldn't be too worried. Bayonetta 3, on the other hand, that is one that I'm kind of wondering, is it going to come out on time? Is it going to make it? Let's keep in mind, Bayonetta 3 isn't being made by Nintendo, it's being made by Platinum Games. They may want to push it up a little bit. They may want that. They may want to make sure that it's ready and it comes out when they know it's going to perform well. And it's going to just be awesome. So, if I had to say, Bayonetta 3 has a stronger chance of being delayed out of this year than Splatoon 3. Splatoon 3, I think it's fine. Bayonetta 3, I can see it, but I also can see Nintendo just waiting for E3 because that's just when they want to talk about it. And they're going to talk about it, and they're going to be like, hey, it's coming out in October. Get ready to enjoy the game. And that's it. And there you go. No worries. So, you know, I kind of see that happening. All right, let me get to some of the questions in the YouTube chat. Let's see if some I've missed here. Okay. All right, so there's a couple. All right, so Niche Quick Pops. I'd like to hear about the reasons for the Breath of the Wild 2 delay, story predictions for Breath of the Wild 2, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, likelihood of new hardware in spring 2023, and your hopes of Xenoblade 3. Definitely not all, but whatever you feel like talking about. So I definitely already touched on Switch in 2023 and Xenoblade 3, I think. I had a pretty good amount of Xenoblade discussion earlier. Hopefully you saw that. I talked about how, I think in terms of like story stuff, like we're going to learn about the history or like what happened to the characters in Xenoblade 1 and 2, like what that's going to be kind of part of the lore. And we're also going to be kind of learning about like how the worlds merged. Like that's going to be like big plot points to figure out as we explore the game. In terms of reasons for Breath of the Wild 2, it could tie into hardware coming out spring 2023. But if it is spring 2023, that makes me think not Switch 2, but like a Switch Pro or Switch Plus. Kind of like a Game Boy to Game Boy Color situation, where it'll be like maybe like a pseudo next generation, but not quite. If that's happening. In terms of story predictions for Breath of the Wild 2, I kind of talked about that already. How like I think Link is going to be trying to acquire the Triforce of Courage. Ganondorf is going to acquire the Triforce of Power. Zelda will be reacquiring her part of the Triforce, will be the Triforce of Wisdom. Going beyond that, I am curious about the hand and its history. I think it's going to be related to the Zonai. Could be wrong on that, but I feel like it's kind of makes sense. And Link will be figuring that out. It may be the case that the people that were missing, some of them, their ancestors went to the skies and they're in the sky realm, right? And that's where Link is exploring. There's villages in the sky. That'd be cool. Zelda's underground. She needs to find her Triforce of Wisdom. And the Sheikah technology is mysteriously vacant in the trailers, right? Maybe the reason why Link and Zelda are underground is because they're trying to find out why the Sheikah is underground, why are things not working, why did Baruta stop working, as we see at the end of Breath of the Wild 1. And they're exploring underground to see why all the Sheikah technology stopped working, why are they back underground. Zelda falls under a hole, maybe she goes into a deep, ancient, like, Sheikah realm, right? And that's kind of her finding the Triforce of Wisdom, because I think that's all related. And then Ganondorf is a powerful beast, and he just gets his Triforce of Power, and the Yiga are like super excited because their god is back. I think that all will tie into the story, maybe. Alright, so Brian Eck. I'm not sure if this has been discussed on the podcast, but if so, maybe it would be interesting to revisit the conversation with talk of a newer vision and your next gen possibly coming. Could you see Nintendo abandoning the hybrid concept for its next gen console and going with a dedicated home and handheld lineup again? Or do you think Nintendo, because of Switch's success, Nintendo will continue with the hybrid design for years to come? I think Nintendo will continue with the hybrid design for years to come. Will they be looking to ways to evolve it? Sure. But I don't see them abandoning the hybrid design anytime soon. I think based off the NVIDIA leak, we kind of have a rough idea that Nintendo is going to be continuing in this direction for a while. Can they ever go back? I don't think so. I just don't see that. I don't see that happening. But I think as time goes on, it won't really matter. Like I think like Nintendo is gonna find a way to, like, mobile technology is continually improving, and I don't want to, I'm not like a huge tech head, but like I've heard people say that the gap between mobile and non-mobile technology is getting smaller, and with things like DLSS technology happening and such, and just diminishing returns, like even though more powerful hardware when it's not mobile is clearly gonna happen, mobile technology is getting so good that for most people it's not going to matter. And I think already for a lot of people it doesn't matter. I still play games on my Switch that look amazing. I think Kirby and the Forgotten Land looks amazing. I think Breath of the Wild looks amazing. I think Mario Odyssey looks amazing. Metroid Dread looks amazing. But they're running on a tablet that's years old, right? Like there are a lot of phones out there that are way more powerful. Granted, phones are also a lot more expensive, which is nuts. But I just, yeah, I'm not. It's not. I don't really think it's a concern. It's just, to me, it's just not a concern. Like, at first when Switch was announced, I was concerned that they'd be able to pull it off. But like, we're getting console experiences on the Switch. I feel like, you know, Nintendo's found a way to give us pretty good style of, like, you know, we're getting traditional games on this technology that can also be mobile, and it also has motion controls. Like, it's doing what the Wii is. It is literally what the Wii was, what we kind of envisioned for a kind of, you know, it gives us that console Nintendo experience. We're getting our big sort of adventure games like Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild and Kirby and Metroid, but we also had the handheld stuff too. And then there's a lot of games coming, a lot of like third-party stuff, a lot of older stuff, a lot of indie stuff. Like, I think this is really the best case scenario for Nintendo. Like, there's more games on Switch than ever before. The quality games just keep coming and coming, and the system is fairly convenient. It loads fast. You can take it wherever you want. It's flexible. You can play it in different ways. You don't have to pre-install a game, wait hours. Like, I was joking around on Twitter with Nate earlier. Like, it's just, I don't think Nintendo wants to go away from this. I think they're going to build on this and continue for a while. Will they eventually find ways to evolve? Yeah, and could this eventually lead to something that doesn't look quite like the Switch anymore? Generations down the road, I can see that. Hard to kind of envision. Well, maybe I can't. I can imagine, yes, but I'm not quite entirely sure how, right? But I do think this follow-up question by Novus Talks kind of is a nice continuation from your question, Brian Eck. So Novus Talks asked or said, I'd like to see a discussion on the idea of Nintendo creating a portable VR-focused Switch as their next console. This might seem odd, but I mention it because it seems like a good evolution for the Switch, and we know the hybrid concept has been on Nintendo's mind since the GameCube. The Virtual Boy was a failure, but they revisited 3D with the 3DS and some VR with Labo. Given that the Switch was a step up from the Wii U, and Nintendo revisits old ideas sometimes, wouldn't it make sense if we eventually see a proper VR system from Nintendo? So, if I remember correctly, before Reggie stepped down, there was an interview somewhere where he was asked about Nintendo doing VR, and he said, we are looking into different things VR related. And eventually we did get Nintendo Labo, right? And it is interesting how Switch is a combination of most concepts, but the Virtual Boy, which is a failure. But what if Nintendo were to revisit it, right? Like, to your point, Nintendo has done the 3D stuff with 3DS. They did do the Nintendo Labo stuff, like kind of putting that there in your face. So they've played around with some of these concepts. Could the Switch 2 be more geared to facilitate this? I think that largely depends on advancements in VR technology and how it's affordable. That's where it gets tricky, right? Can Nintendo pull it off in a way that's affordable? And Nintendo did with Nintendo Labo, but also wasn't like the most high quality, most in-depth version of VR either, right? I don't know if Switch 2 will be like VR out of the box. It would be interesting if they kind of came with a built-in headset to do that, like it's like an additional thing there. But I can almost see that being like a separate purchase. And I don't know if Nintendo wants to do the 2 SKUs thing again, where they come out with a Switch 2 at $300 and a Switch 2 plus VR at $400. It will be more powerful, so that could kind of help things. I will say this though, because of the DLSS technology, being able to get higher resolutions with less outputting power because of the upscaling, that might mitigate some of the problems of VR and kind of having to, like, you know, sacrifice horsepower and resolution when it's close up and having kind of like the soul of the VR thing. Being able to run at higher resolutions could mitigate that problem a little bit. So I don't know if Switch 2 will be geared around VR in the sense that it'll be marketed as, hey, this is the big hook for Switch 2, you can do VR out of the box. But it wouldn't surprise me if there's more of a dedicated VR option for Switch 2 at some point during its life cycle. Because I do think we will be a lot closer to that. So something more proper. I do think that. If they could do some semblance of it on Switch with cardboard, I think with more powerful hardware and DLSS becoming more of a thing, I think that could make a big difference for sure. So I can I'll stand by what I said. I don't think it'll be come in the box ready to go VR, but I think there could be like a VR attachment that'll be sold separately, and then someone can market and be like, hey, if you want VR, here you go. Maybe do some bundles down the road. This is years after the release of Switch 2, like not immediately. But I do think it could be like a legitimate like VR option. Kind of like, how PlayStation 4 had like a separate VR option. I think PS5 does too. Although I think they offered a SKU that came with it in the box. I don't remember. I want to say no, but I haven't been that invested into it to know the actual details. But I know both PS4 and PS5 have VR options, and they can be purchased separately depending on the SKU. I know that. So that's kind of how I could see it. But of course, I don't think Nintendo will launch Switch 2 VR out of the gate when Switch 2 is ready. I think it'll be later on. But I do see that in the future, and as generations progress, maybe it could be something that does come out of the box as we move further into the future and this technology becomes more readily available, more affordable, things of that nature. There's more advancements that kind of make these things more simplified. But we'll see. We will see on that. Anyways, guys, I think pretty much, yeah, we're at 3 hours. I have a migraine. I think my voice is getting sore. But, I think I addressed most of the main questions. Obviously, if there's more, feel free to put them in the chat. Save them for next week. You can hit me up on Twitter. I will get to you eventually, maybe. I'll see it. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for listening and watching. Leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, or join as a member if you haven't done that. There are some perks there as well. But I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.